One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and tonight we are going on about a film that I do believe is a choice of Dustin's because it is his birthday, and he'll be on shortly. So hopefully, you know, once he gets on, we'll be able to get into a more broader discussion. But I believe, let me pull up the IMDb for this sucker, since I didn't entirely prepare to host this right off camp.
It's a 2023 release, another one.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's see. That we are going to be going on about is called Five Nights at Freddy's, and I guess you could say it's not the first film that was initially introduced into this realm of what kind of film it is, because I think there were a couple of people trying to jump at the gun to try to get something out there of the game or inspired by the game, because I do think Willy's Wonderland and I think the Banana Splits are two movies that are in the same vein of this film, and it's been talked about a lot over the past couple of months. So, but in any case, let's see what IMDb says about the film. Let's see. It says a troubled security guard begins working at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza during his first night on the job. He realizes that the night shift won't be so easy to get through. Pretty soon he will unveil what actually happened at Freddy's. So, let's see, and the game itself, I believe, the original game came out in I believe it was 2000. Let's see, Five Nights at Freddy. That's at Freddy's movie. Let's see. Bring that up here shortly. Okay, so the game was created by Scott Cawthon. It was directed by Tammi, who co-wrote the screenplay, and the film stars Josh Hutcherson. Let's see. And the video game itself was released on August 8th, 2014. So I believe that there are 5, 6, 7 games in the franchise that I know of, at least as far as being on PS 4 or whatever. But yeah. Let's see. Okay. So, as far as anything goes, as far as the game goes, has anyone here played the game besides me? Well, I've played at least the first game. And
nope.
I just today got the game Security Breach and was playing some of that today. And I'll tell you something. Between the two, I like Security Breach better because you're not just sitting in a room trying to catch shit that's going on monitors or anything like that. So, but let us go into first impressions. And let's start with you, Tammi. Was this the first time watch for you?
Yes, and I don't know anything about the video games, so except for what you've told me. But yes, it definitely reminded me of that other one that you mentioned. I believe it's got Nicolas Cage in it.
Yeah, Willy's Wonderland.
Yeah, it did remind me a lot of that one. In fact, I remember when I saw the ads for this, I mentioned that to you. Oh, that kind of looks like, but yeah, it was decent. I mean, when you once you started to realize what the whole plot was and the whole storyline really was about, you know, and the whole background on like the whole background on like the mechanical things, creatures, when that all started to come to light as to what they were and why they were acting the way they were and everything, it made it it made it more interesting too, because you wanted, you got to the point where you wanted him to solve this mystery and to find out what exactly all happened, and bring it full circle, so that itself was a way to keep you interested in it, because you were kind of like rooting for him to get this figured out, so yeah, I thought it was definitely very interesting.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Is this a first time watch for you? And what do you know going into this film?
Well, yes, this is a first time watch. I feel like at this point you probably have to be living under a rock to have never heard of Five Nights at Freddy's. Of course, that might just be the company I keep. I don't know. I have never played the game. I've never read the comics. I've seen them. I know they exist. I didn't get to see Willy's Wonderland or Banana Splits, although especially Willy's Wonderland, I really wanted to see. I know last year Brandon was a big pusher for Nicolas Cage's performance in that one. I know. And this one did have at least one standout performance. I was very, very amused by Matthew Lillard's role. It's not a big one, but it is big enough to where it's more bit player than cameo. And by the way, folks, we're going to be spoiling the shit out of this. So, in case we didn't already tell you. But it was an interesting movie. I mean, I got to add another 2023 film to the list, so that's cool. That's always cool. And there are a few areas where the movie does excel. I really love the use of, they had the Jim Henson's Creature Shop actually working on this, doing actual puppetry for the animatronic.
I noticed that.
And so that's really cool that they actually went old school with the puppetry and didn't try to do a bunch of flashy CG or whatever. So I give it props for pulling that off nicely. The overall production, we'll talk to that when we get to production, but it does have some really cool stuff going for it, and the posters for the movie were good. they did have some nice posters for this one. So, which I have a piece of one on for my little icon there. It overall, the story was kind of, it had an interesting intrigue to it, but the main character was kind of a douchebag. I mean, he wasn't really, but he was like, he was hard to get behind. Let's put it that way. It was hard to, you got a couple, and then the aunt. Oh my god, I don't know what her deal was, and they never really explained in the movie exactly what her deal was. So there were a few things that they could have been a little stronger. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was good. I thought last week's choice was better. Probably quite a bit better, actually. But I'm glad I finally got to see something from this franchise, so I at least know a little bit more about what everyone's on about.
And I myself, I have heard about Five Nights at Freddy's. I thought for the longest time that it was like more geared towards like kids, and I guess it wasn't until like the couple of weeks leading up to this discussion that I was entirely interested in checking out the games, at least for the PS4 system that I have. They actually have a core collection for at least the first 5 games in the series, and I at least got a chance to check out the first game. I have Help Wanted on the way, and Security Breach showed up today, and I was able to play like an hour of gameplay. And to be honest, I like this Security Breach one better than the other one. So I'm curious and how it's going to play out the rest of the time. But as far as the movie goes, I heard a few things before I went into watching it. Some of it from Brandon, some of it from other people chit-chatting. And the jump scares. The jump scares were minimal. And from what I understand, the jump scares actually in the game really like jump scare you. And they went like more PG-13 with the jump scares, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, there's a little monkey dude in the locker. So what? There's only one jump scare that actually I liked in the whole thing, which was in the end credits. So I wish that the jump scares would have made you jump a little bit.
The monkey one, though, did make for a nice little recurring chuckle.
I did. And that's the only one that I actually cared about. That to me was like the money shot of the whole entire movie. But that is just me. I mean, I thought it was interesting that, we had a character that had evidently had something happen to him when he was fairly young, a missing child case, which he didn't know who the hell took him and why, and he kept on trying to dream to figure out, the whole identity of and the whereabouts and what happenstances that happened when he was, I think he said he was 14. I think he said he was 14 when his brother got taken. Could have been 12.
12.
12? Okay. So he was 12 years old when his brother ended up going and getting taken from a Nebraska woods, which is why he kept having those posters wherever he was.
Yeah, I had to joke about that. Like, who wants to go to Nebraska that badly? But yeah, teach their own.
We have the character of Greg, which is interesting because in the security breach game, you are actually this little kid named Gregory, and you start out inside like one of the mechanisms, and the security guard is actually looking for you. And this is how you start out the game. So, as far as having the name of Gregory as an adult, I wonder if that has anything to do with the character. But in any case, Greg evidently has a sister, and evidently his mom and dad, I'm trying to remember what he said happened to them. His dad went nuts, and the mother killed herself.
Mom just passed away.
Okay, the mom just passed away. The aunt is an interesting character because she's kind of a bitch.
And the father is just
kinda
never really able to take care of things, is what it was, or whatever, or take care of the kids.
Yeah. I want to know what's going on with the aunt's lawyer. He looks scared shitless in life.
Well, yeah, I think he was.
Jump, you know?
With her as a client, I can imagine.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, the aunt is definitely trying to fight the well-being of her niece, only to get, as Greg says, the money, the paycheck per week, and vice versa. She thinks that he is the worst for, especially after this one incident that happens in the very beginning of the movie. There is an incident where he is a security guard in a mall, and I think he's talking about dreams in a dream book with a fellow coworker of his, and then he goes and grabs or tries to go grab a certain flavor of ice cream, but he notices a child that is off in the distance a little bit, and at first he thinks that this child is being abducted. So he runs after the child and the man he thinks is kidnapping the child, and he just literally comes out and beats him to a bloody pulp, I guess.
The man, not the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically wrestles the guy apart from the kid, and then they fall into a fountain, and he's just pounding away at him. Possibly, you don't really get to see the guy, but you're feeling like he might not even be above water for half of this. It's like, yeah. You find out later why he might have been a little touchy about that, but at the time, you're like, holy shit, what's this guy's problem?
Well, and I think he misjudged the man.
Well, yeah.
I think the kid was just being, that was his father, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, no, they say so.
Yeah.
They do say
so. And that's one thing that the aunt has against him, and in fact, she threatens to use it as a ledge to bring it to the court system. In fact, he was given a packet of family court papers that she's obviously drawn up or had drawn up. And the social worker is, in fact, in favor of Greg taking care of his sister. And she's trying to convince him that all the drawings that she's drawing is a way of her communicating to him and others. And a lot of children often use drawing as a way of, going into a different world or whatnot. And this is her way of coping and all that jazz. So, what do y'all think about Greg as a person and his little sister?
I think Greg is. I think he's a good person. He's just got a lot of things going on in his mind right now. He's trying to do the best he can to take care of his sister, but he keeps having these reoccurring dreams about what happened to the brother. And
See, I disagreed with his behavior towards the physician that he went and got his dream pills with later on. There was no need for him to act so cruel towards him. He was just trying to tell him a different way of doing things.
I think and this is one of the reasons why I said he's hard to get behind. I don't disagree with what Tammi said. He is a good guy. When you realize why he's as screwed up as he is, you have some empathy for him. But he basically, and a lot of this is probably the aunt's fault because she's such a bitch and she keeps trying to take his sister away, who's like the one person he has left that he cares about. He is wounded. He is afraid of the world. He is pissed off at the world. He is not very well socialized. And him snapping at the pharmacist was more of, I have a feeling he hears that day in and day out. He probably hears it from every angle, and he didn't want to hear it from one more person. You know what I mean? It wasn't out of nowhere. I think he snapped because he has already heard that too many times. But the pharmacist had no way of knowing, and yeah, he definitely looked hurt.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry about our little delay here, but
all right.
we are on. Are we at the pharmacy scene?
We're kind of
doing
just rambling
But
about character.
Your
things for-
intro.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us your first impressions, at least, of the franchise and or
Well-
the film?
Well, so the first game came out somewhere around when I had my first apartment. I think that was between 2012 and 2014.
The
And
game
my
came
room.
out August 8th, 2014.
So it was 2014. Okay.
Yep.
Because there had been one of my roommate had told me a little bit about it and had shown me some clips of gameplay, but it wasn't something that was particularly on my radar. I did try to play it, and I played through a good amount of the first game before it was just kind of. I don't know. It was. It was a hard thing to describe, really, because I'd never played a game that was like it before, where it was just fast-paced, simple tasks, and the jump scares did not scare me off. That's what I want to emphasize. But for whatever reason, I just never kind of went back to it. There was a lot of other stuff going on, so I just sort of forgot that it was a thing. And later, when more of them came out, eventually at some point I remember there was a collection of all 4 games, the first 4 games, and it was on some sort of almost suspicious sale. So I bought all 4 games for I think $5 for my phone, and I never got around to playing them. But the more time I spent online, as time progressed, the more I would hear people, talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. And, I'm going to admit a lot of my conceptions of what it was like were, based off the first game, ended up being pretty wrong. For example, there was a very long argument about, would Five Nights at Freddy's characters be good in Dead by Daylight? And, they didn't feel like real horror characters to me. And I would get a lot of people giving me a lot of really long lists of bullet points about, what the story is, why that was wrong, just, all that kind of stuff. So eventually I was like, maybe I should like give this another shot. How many games are there? There are 7 games now. Wow.
Yeah.
So it really grew and evolved. And the first game did not really have much of a plot. Like, one of the things that I always thought was cool about the series was that its storyline was kind of implied through things in the environment or like little like clips of dialogue. And apparently people have really kind of glommed onto that to try to figure out like what the story of this thing is. Like, somebody made the joke that there has been more like analysis of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore than there has been of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there is a chance that could be true, given how many like 10-hour like lore dump theories there are on YouTube. So it was also kind of a historically significant thing, and that's where watching people play games online really became a thing, because it's like, yeah, let's watch this guy like, get like terrified by these jump scares. And I think kind of a lot of our current like online media culture comes from those first videos of people just watching and reacting to this. So like there are some people who are like really rich and famous now because they just started doing that one day at the right time.
Well, if not,
it turns out the story is pretty elaborate too. So I went from a positive first impression of the first game to kind of a negative impression of the series, from seeing how people would like talk about it online to having a positive opinion of it again after I started. It's like, oh, there's a movie coming out, I should maybe like look into this a little bit more. And just from conversations I had with people about like the Dead by Daylight character like appropriateness, I ended up picking up quite a bit of what the premise of the first 4 games at least was. And it's like, okay, this is pretty cool. I can deal with this. And then when the movie came out, I was kind of still halfway expecting it to be like super childish and like for me to like really hate it, because I mean it does sort of skew to a younger crowd, just the franchise in general, even though some of the horror in there is pretty good. It's mostly implied, not shown though. And so I was pretty happy with this movie the first time I saw it. Like I was genuinely surprised. Like I really thought it was not going to be all that great. And I had seen movies like this before, Willy's Wonderland, the Banana Splits movie, which were more like adult targeted, and they were like really gory and nasty.
I feel like Willy's Wonderland was more in tune with the Five Nights at Freddy's than the Banana Splits was, but I get
Banana Splits was definitely meaner. Like Willy's Wonderland was more kind of goofy, and I think that was kind of, I don't know, the real tone of the Five Nights at Freddy's stuff is somewhere in between, I think, because there's, when violence does happen, like in the games, you only kind of see like aftermath, like when you fail in the first game, like your character is like shoved into an animatronic, and you just see like the broken suit with like your body parts like ever so slightly sticking out to like suggest like what happened, and it's like, eeh.
So that didn't happen to me in the first game, because I ended up picking up like the core collection like a couple weeks back.
Okay, so I could be misremembering it then, because it
might be one of the later ones.
I think all 4 of them came out relatively fast, like boom, boom, boom.
They did.
So I could be blurring the information from
the first one,
second or third one.
And I tried playing it a little bit. I didn't do any gameplay on YouTube yet, but you're basically sitting in the security booth, and you can't really go outside the fucking thing, but you're supposed to like keep track of whatever's on the screen. And I kid you not, I lasted like 3 hours, and then suddenly the bear came, laughed at me, and then it said game over, and I was like, what the fuck?
You didn't shut the door fast enough, I bet, huh?
It didn't allow me to. So.
Or which bear was it? Was it the bear with like the messed up face, or was it the normal
bear with the messed up face?
Okay, because I don't know. It took me a minute to figure this out. So there are 2 Freddys. Did you guys catch that?
There's 2 different Freddys.
Yeah. That one is called Golden Freddy, apparently. And the main difference is that his face is kind of like messed up. And from what little I understand, I wanted to do some more reading on this just to be sure, because Five Nights at Freddy's fans are really dedicated. And if I say something wrong and they hear it, they might come after me. But from what I understand, Golden Freddy was kind of a like certain conditions had to be met for him to like potentially show up, and so you might have gotten like the really bad luck, surprise, he's here, like death there, which from what I understand can happen. Like you're doing fine, and then if the clock is at the wrong time when you like press this button, like you're dead. But that was what the scene like late in the movie was when like Freddy goes to pick up Abby.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, Freddy? And he's like, no. It's like that was actually a different kid. Although it was pretty who's in like the Golden Freddy.
It was not told
robot.
or clear that this was a totally different Freddy.
They did say it was a different Freddy, and he does look different from like the one that's like just hanging out on stage. Like they are clearly like two different robots, but you have to really be focusing on it to notice. So that a lot of people miss that. I missed that the first time because the whole time I was trying to count children, like, wait a minute, we're missing one. Oh, wait. And then I looked up and it's like, oh, okay, that was my best guess.
Yeah, I think they said, let's see, there was something about Golden Freddy on the IMDb page.
We're all old, so this is going to be kind of be patient with us if you're a younger listening.
But it was something, okay, there was a Golden Freddy stunt suit built. Oh, okay. So he was, never mind. He was in there, but they didn't use the stunt suit. Okay. No, I admit I didn't catch that there were different ones. Didn't know to look for that, but.
So, from what I understand, Golden Freddy has a somewhat more supernatural like side to him. Like he's not necessarily just hanging out in a closet at the place. It's like he's. I don't know. It's like that was my theory as to how he could actually leave the pizza place, was that he was not 100% like physically bound. Sure. The lore is so convoluted that it's quite a possibility. At least according to like 2 or 3 different like theory breakdowns I saw. So, but that was kind of a confusing thing. But anyway, so it sounds like you encountered that thing in your attempted playthrough. And I know Walmart has the first 4 games for Switch, which if I ever have money for anything ever again, I kind of want to take a crack at that. But anyway, so after I saw the movie, I was like, okay, yeah, I really want to learn more about this, Like, I was so surprised. Like, that was so much better than I thought it would be. Like, it didn't go, like, over the top of anything. It felt very, like, careful and measured. And like nothing went too far. Nothing was really all that unexplained. I mean, it could be very confusing if you hadn't. Well, what I did before I saw the movie was I just kind of, based off of what I remembered people telling me about it, like I just looked up a real quick, what is the story of Five Nights at Freddy's? And it's like, oh, okay, sure. And then you watch the movie, and the movie is pretty much just that. Like the movie is almost straight up like the story as presented in the games. And the reason I picked this movie for us this month, and the reason I picked it was because I wanted to, I guess, explore some of the reactions to it, because some people really hated this, and they were like, oh, it didn't make any sense, blah, 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 blah. And just most of their complaints were honestly kind of ridiculous. I mean, I was talking to some people who, like, they're paid to write about horror movies. Like, they're people I respect. And some of their complaints were along the lines of, it's Five Nights at Freddy's. It's supposed to be about killer animatronics, not about. And then they described like the storyline, and it's like, but that's the story in the game. It is the story in the game. Like, did you play the game? I don't understand why you're mad. And I had other people. It's like, well, you shouldn't have to like check into all these other things to understand a movie. It's like, it's a movie based on a game. Like, why did you, like the way I phrased it on Twitter that like actually got like a lot of like positive feedback was it's like, this movie is about a video game. What is the plot of the video game? Was a question that went unasked by a lot of the people who gave it a bad review.
I guess my biggest gripe with this movie overall is the jump scares weren't that jumpy. They were trying to keep it PG-13, and I was hoping to at least have one of them pop out at me and be like, make me at least jump a little bit. A lot of them I just kind of watched through, and it was like, okay, that was supposed to make me fear it, like, But I do like the atmosphere of the film. I do like the atmosphere. It did get the atmosphere of the game, and
Exactly.
especially since I was just playing Security Breach earlier today. Just a little bit before we got on, actually.
Oh, nice.
But in that one, you actually start out as a little kid named Gregory, and you start out, I think, in that golden Freddy that you were talking about, and a security guard is looking for you, and you've got to figure out your way to the front of the building with that robot, with that animatronics help. So it's kind of interesting, but
yeah, that's another important thing to touch on too. That what made this movie, like, some people were like, it wasn't scary enough, and what it was going for was, like you said, the atmosphere. So it has a very creepy and dark like premise and atmosphere. Which, I mean, it may not seem that way at first until you really start like thinking about like some of the things that were that happened in there, or that were alluded to have happened, and it was just like, damn, like. But in terms of a frightening nonstop movie, like we have one sequence where they kill like those guys who broke in, and I think people wanted the whole movie to be like that. Whereas I think I liked having that not be the focus of the movie, and then having that scene early on, and with the prologue with the guard too, like showing that no, these things are really dangerous, like, and the characters just not knowing.
They ended up killing that crew off fairly quickly.
Would you? And I felt bad seeing Max go. I think that was the way that they dispatched her though was interesting. But it's a thing. Like, it's a weird thing when you have a horror or horror-ish movie that people go in with expectations that may not be based in reality. Let's put it that way. And one that comes to mind for me was Crimson Peak. When Crimson Peak came out, everyone thought, ooh, it's a ghost story. It's going to be all creepy and all this stuff. And it's like, it was a love story with ghosts. And that so many people had the wrong impression going in that it got all this flack from people that really didn't, you could understand why they'd have those expectations, but it's not that the movie was bad, just people were looking for the wrong thing. And I could see how, if you went into this looking for a gore fest, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, and that was another thing too. I don't think people should have expected a gore fest, because the games, I mean, like I said, it's implied a lot, but it's not really like that from, my admittedly limited knowledge. But I mean, I know what they're rated, so I know they can't go too far.
Right.
Like, the suggestion of a lot of this stuff is genuinely almost worse than it's like seeing it.
Yeah. Some of this stuff is genuinely messed up. Like, and a lot of the themes are, it's not a kid's movie. A lot of these themes are themes that would go right over the heads of some kids and would bother some others. But yeah, so it is a good. Like, I didn't love the movie, but I did think it did a pretty good job. Like, and certainly the atmosphere did a good job with that.
Exactly. And like I think another reason I'm kind of more advocating for it too is that if I go in with certain expectations about a movie and I'm expecting to hate it and I'm kind of prepared to hate it, and then it just proves me wrong and like really blows me away, then I tend to want to like advocate for it. And I, after being a Five Nights at Freddy's skeptic, for lack of a better way to put it, after seeing this and being like, wow, that was actually pretty good, I want to advocate for this movie and, have that discussion. It's like, well, I did exactly, people think this wasn't very good. Like, because, I mean, a lot of those reviews came from older people who weren't familiar with the games. And, I mean, I really wasn't familiar either, but, it was still, good for me. Like, I was still able to figure stuff out despite, I did have some pre-existing knowledge, but it was pretty limited. So I was just kind of really baffled to see like all these like bloody, disgusting writers and like horror critics that I know who are generally pretty smart just be like, it sucked because they didn't do this. And it's like, really? So, I mean, I just have nothing but positive things to say about this.
I don't know anything about the games. I remember seeing the ads for it and thought it looked kind of interesting. And right away I told David it seemed a lot like that other one, the
Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland. It reminded me of that. And
well, and in preparation for this discussion myself, I wanted to at least have some firsthand knowledge, at least of the gameplay. So I hunted out a copy of the core collection for the PS4, and like I said, the latest one showed up today, and the one before that is still on its way, just so that I can check it out. But I'm liking Security Breach. I still have to go back and play some of the core collection just to see what the other games are like, and stories are similar or dissimilar, but I wanted to know more about it so that I wasn't just dismissing it, so
right. It's good to take the initiative with doing that, like I tried to do and was somewhat defeated on. So been pushing myself pretty hard to try and get a bunch of stuff done before the first of the month, and it's not going so great. Let's just put it that way.
Well, if you ever want to join me on some gameplay on YouTube on this sucker, let me know.
Maybe, yeah.
I wouldn't mind some commentary along with or some intellect on how to get past certain things. So, at most we started talking about what we thought of Greg as a person. As a character. What did you think?
I like Greg as a character because he's well, I guess at least to kind of how I've been feeling lately. Like he feels kind of relatable and realistic. How just he didn't necessarily make a mistake because there really wasn't a whole lot that he could have done that would have made what happened different. But he really beats himself up over like what happened in the past, and just he blames himself for that, and you can see like the toll it's taking on him. Like he doesn't really sleep, or well, he's actually trying to use his sleep to solve the problem, but it just seems like he's really run ragged like this entire thing. And we see things like don't really work out very well for him. Like he does have a job and he gets like fired right away. And so I don't know. I really sympathize with Greg. And for the most part, like I don't think he does anything like too egregiously bad. I mean, there is that moment like later on in a moment of how do we put it? In a moment of weakness, he like mutters yes to something like he's always wanted, which we'll get into.
Well,
Before almost immediately being like, wait, no.
when he went and got his dream pills, he was quite nasty to the physician dude. He was trying to tell him a different way, and he just grabbed the thing and he called him an ass.
That guy was fucking annoying. Like, I can't, I hate it so fucking bad when people do that to me. It's like, oh yeah, well, you need these very strong pills to do this thing. The fact that you've been prescribed these at all means you have a super serious problem that normal methods have not, been able to ameliorate. I'm going to recommend to you the most basic bitch, like, thing you would have been taught what to do as a child. Like, and be surprised that you're annoyed at that. It's like, I don't know. I would have maybe done the same thing too. And the pharmacist was like, what an asshole. It's like, no, you're annoying.
Yeah, I made a similar point that it's probably not the first time he's heard someone throwing in their 2 cents, and especially with an aunt.
I guess I kind of see it as more of the dude's just trying to tell him a different method. It's the first time he's heard it from that guy. Maybe he's heard that similar message before, but I was taught to be nice to people to a certain degree. And
well, after the 20th time it's probably happened to him, like, I would not. I don't know. I am totally not on the pharmacist side here. I mean, I have had a really ugly health problem this year, and it's the kind of thing that has needed like emergency surgery multiple times. It's needed like full on medical intervention with drugs they only have like at the hospital. And then I still have some people like, oh, why didn't you just try taking a cold bath? It's like, what do you think I did first? You fucking idiot. Like, why are you saying anything to me? Go die. Like, I've had quite a few of those moments. So, like, that scene was like, yes, perfectly relatable. Like, he did nothing wrong. But, I mean, I get, like, the being polite in public kind of thing, but he looked like he hadn't really, like, slept for many days. So, So, anyway. Where was I? I went on a tangent there.
Well, I think you were somewhat telling what you thought of Greg when we got into the.
But yeah, I think Greg is a good guy who's just trying to do his best. After, it's the more he talks about his backstory, the more it's clear, like, his brother was abducted when they were on like a family picnic, and he blames himself because he was supposed to watch his brother. And because he's a child himself, like, he looks away for like a minute or two, and that's long enough for somebody to just grab his brother and throw them into their car. And his last memory of his brother is like seeing him in the back window of a car as it's being driven away while he's like chasing after it. And it's like, that's so incredibly traumatic. Like, that would really like destroy your life. And then he describes like what happened afterward, where like his parents like broke up. Yeah. He ended up having to take care of his sister. Which he does look a little too. I mean, I'm not sure how old Abby is in this. She doesn't look like.
She looks like
This makes me wonder too. Like, his parents must not have split up right away. Obviously.
Yeah, because I don't remember them having a baby in that flashback.
Yeah, you have to wonder about the timeline a little bit, but because what would we say? Like,
he looks like mid to late 20s.
I would say late 20s at least. Josh Hutcherson. Josh Hutcherson. Oh yeah, he's the dude from Hunger Games. That's what I know him from.
It is important to note. A lot of people actually miss this too. This movie is set in the year. This movie is set in the year 2000. So
okay,
the way I know in the games that the stuff that happened when Freddy's was actually open, like his brother would have been abducted probably somewhere around like 87, 88. So we have to assume that he looks like, what, 10, maybe 12 in that flashback?
He's
So-
12, I think.
So he's 12? Okay, so that would make him 25, I think. And he looks like a rough 25, but that kind of makes sense considering the things he describes, his life being like after that.
Yeah, that works.
Although a lot of people did point out that one thing that felt like a flaw with this was that because of the age difference, it felt like Abby should have been like his daughter, which wouldn't have worked knowing the timing, but that was kind of what their dynamic was like. I mean, he's taking care of her, so it makes sense, but it was not without merit a complaint. Let me put it that way.
I think because she looks like or I don't know if they give her exact age. I think they do, but I don't remember it. But
No,
I'm feeling like
they give it.
I'm feeling like
but she looks like she's either 8 or 10.
At least 10-ish, I would think. I was thinking 10 or 11-ish.
She was in. She was like a little pat. It's actually. I don't interact with kids very much, so it's genuinely hard for me to remember how old you are in kindergarten and stuff. So I can kind of only guess. I mean, she was maybe third grade? How old are you in third grade?
Oh, she's older than that.
She's older than that?
I think so, at least.
Although she did seem like she was in kindergarten or first grade.
Yeah, that was kind of my first impression. I'm kind of trying to make sense of the timeline too, because
maybe I'm seeing it very differently than y'all are. I'm thinking she's at least 10, maybe older. And if that's the case, then that would mean, if they had her maybe 2 years later, and then everything fell to shit with a baby on top of everything, that would explain the timeline pretty well.
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think I like that better than what I had for my headcanon explanation of that.
And what do we think about his sister as a character?
She doesn't do a whole lot. We don't get we don't get inner monologues from her, but I think we get just enough to know that she's maybe a little weird, she's more nonverbal and just draws to communicate. It sort of gives the impression that maybe she was old enough to be aware of what happened to their parents, and that might have messed her up, but it's again not really very clear. I mean, I think she's fine as a character, and I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Yep.
She does seem quite capable of communication. Later on, in particular, she's just very, very, very close down around most people. Basically, partly because she apparently has some sort of connection to these kids that most adults just kind of, including her brother, seem to just kind of dismiss. And, obviously, if people are being dismissive of all your friends, you're going to be less likely to want to open up to them.
Yeah, there was kind of a psychic sensitivity thing that was implied but not touched on a whole lot. But that was pretty much what I was trying to say. So, I mean, it's I like this story because it feels like all the plot pieces are relevant. There aren't, probably going to get somebody jumping on me for this, but it doesn't feel like there are really loose ends. The things that the characters do come around at the end and mean things.
It does, and I like this circularity of the plot a little bit. When the big mastermind is revealed, it is a nice little callback to scenes earlier on. But I have been wondering, for this to have worked out the way it did, either this one dude has been pulling strings for years with this family, or that is a hell of a convenient circumstance. And it's not fully explained, I think, in the movie which one that is. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think it's more of a coincidence because,
Yeah.
like,
It's a hell of a convenient coincidence.
well, not maybe not too much of a coincidence because, you know, the person who abducted Mike's brother, like I'm gonna start calling him the killer.
Mhm.
So like the killer who was behind the, you know, disappearances at Freddy's as well. Like it's implied that he was responsible for many other like children's disappearances, like all over the
Well,
place.
it's pretty much stated. The girl who reveals that she's his daughter comes right out and says, "Yeah, he did it."
Exactly. And so somebody made the point that there would have probably been a lot of press coverage around those disappearances. And so like wouldn't the killer like be kind of into like memorizing the names of like his victims? Like he would know, it's like, oh yeah, this was Garrett Schmidt that I abducted, you know, and he had that was the kid with the toy plane. I remember that kid. And so I mean, we are, of course, going to spoil the crap out of the movie, which apparently a lot of people saw this twist coming. I knew about the character. I did not know enough to tag this character as that character like the first time. So I still got surprised.
I had a mild surprise, but there was another reason why it was apparently they goofed. I missed this because I saw nothing in the promotion about this, but apparently they goofed and announced that Matthew Lillard was playing Afton when they meant to announce that he was playing Raglan. So
yeah, that is
unfortunate. Bad. But the
starring,
thing is,
you know, Betsy Palmer as the killer.
For someone my age, with the huge glut of nostalgia that is in the theaters now, like this is the era of the Mario Brothers movie and the Barbie movie and all these that are trading heavily on nostalgia, you're going to have a twist ending where the killer is played by the guy who was revealed to be the killer in a twist in Scream. It's like that when you cast Matthew Lillard and then kind of disappeared him from the movie for a while, you're like, I wonder.
You know, that is a great point. Like, because I mean, I forgot about that guy too, honestly. Like rewatching it for probably like the third time today, because I watched a lot of movie reactions to this as well as like watched it like multiple times too, just to be sure I, you know, knew what I was talking about. So in the intro, which did we talk about like that really awesome like pixel art intro sequence that sets up, you know,
no, but that was fun
being abducted. When they show Purple Guy, because that's what he was known as for quite a long time before really getting a name.
Oh yeah, his name. Yeah, I saw that on the IMDb thing, and I was like, oh
yeah, yeah. And it was like and starring blah 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 and Matthew Lillard, and then it shows Purple Guy, and it like his name is like right next to like Purple Guy as he puts on like the costume, and it's like, oh, that's a really hard giveaway, guys. Like what? It's like I made this joke already, but I'm gonna go back to it. It's like if Friday the 13th had like an intro montage of actor names, and it was like, and Betsy Palmer with her like, you know, holding the machete. But it was kind of funny. But anyway, like yeah, so people like, if you didn't know who William Afton was, that, you know, I didn't, so I still got like a, oh, it's all coming together like moment out of that too. But I think if you were paying attention like up to the release and you were like a big fan, like that would have maybe been kind of an annoying spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
But we're slightly off track here. So we were just talking about like the setup with he recognizes Mike's last name because he recognizes the Rubber's last name. And this is after he's gotten fired for he thought he saw a kid being abducted at his mall security guard job, and he tackles the guy and beats his ass, and so that's why he's here needing a new job. And I'm sure they discussed that off camera. It's well, why did you freak out like that?
Yeah.
And then so I imagine the character's you're Michael. Oh, hey, I know someplace you could work.
Yeah, and it's also we know what happened to the previous guard because of that opening scene. You don't really have any way at this point of knowing for sure that Raglan knows why the place can't seem to hold down a security guard, but there's every reason to believe that he is in on it as well. And the way that he I said this before we started, I really enjoyed Matthew Lillard's performance in the movie. I thought he was one of the best things about it. I thought, and I just loved the way he played Raglan, and he played him with this sort of sense of almost not giving a fuck, but also kind of he was able to be convincing that he was actually trying to help Greg out, but he also was being mean mommy and just telling him straight up, look, dude, you screwed up hard. No one wants to hire you anymore. But guess what? I got this for you, which just happens to,
Pay ain't great.
What's that?
The pay isn't great, but this is a job for you.
But that's what I'm saying. The likelihood that Greg would have ended up in his career counselor office purely by accident doesn't seem. It seems like that's that right there was a heck of a coincidence, if it was a coincidence. But I do think that it was Raglan did see the opportunity there and go, and it was pretty fun.
I think that's Dustin's mic. So
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think let's see.
Yeah, it's still the thing it did last week.
Dustin, I'm gonna let you go from the studio so that you can figure out what's going on. I think you're
there. You go.
Over now.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So I'm using a Yeti mic, and I bumped the cable that has it plugged into the computer. And sometimes when I do that, the whole thing flips out on me.
Yeah. Yeah. They got it fixed.
Yeah. So I just had to plug it in. But anyway, back to the point. But yeah, he even comments on that with his big villain monologue at the end. Symmetry, he's given that's part of his speech. What are the odds?
Right.
I love how when he goes into his whole speech about the whole place, he's like, the lights are kind of iffy, and then the lights get kind of shifty.
Yeah, it's because there's supernatural fuckery afoot. But I mean, it does also make sense too, why he wouldn't want the building torn down or anything, because if that happened, they would almost definitely find those bodies in there, and I bet there are more bodies than just surprise those that are in the robots. So one person made the complaint that oh, what was the point of the story with the rubber? It's it kicks off the plot of investigating the child murder. What do you mean? What was the point of that?
Right.
I mean, it's just like, I know you're like an experienced film critic. It's the basic starter of the story. Like, what do you mean we don't need it? Like, are you kidding me? Like, people just really threw their brains away with some of the criticisms of this film because they were so desperate to hate on it. And like one thing somebody complained, that guy said too, was, why couldn't we get like a tearful reunion in the pizza place with like his brother being a ghost or being one of the animatronics? Like, why didn't we get that? And it's like, because we don't need that. Like, that's not part of the story, really.
Well, no.
And also, it's really like, that's like the corniest like cliche you probably could have come up with. Like, why do you want that? It's like, it's a TV movie would do, maybe, but that's not a.
That's because I think that his brother was either taken or killed like way before he started collecting spirits for these animatronics. It was like almost like his brother was his first, and
right.
Just wanted to say that Mike is dude's name. So I know you've been saying his name was Greg.
Oh yeah, why are we saying Mike? Why are we saying Greg? Where'd that come from?
No, and unless you see something like a lot of times, it's genuinely difficult to really remember a lot of people's names. Like, at least for me, I'm always like visual, so it's like, oh, that guy, It's like, what was his name?
Yeah.
Crap.
That's his name, that guy. There you go. But yeah, it could very well be. It could even be that maybe he had already set the place up, but he hadn't figured out. Maybe he did try to do that with Garrett and it didn't work. So you never know. I mean, or it could be that actually that scary little monkey was actually Garrett.
Yeah, that was a theory I heard too. Like the balloon boy thing that just kind of appears and disappears where it wants. Some people, I think I had the theory too that might have had Garrett in it, but it's also kind of suggested that like he has some sort of power over the spirits in the animatronics, but he doesn't. It's not made clear that he like if he created them directly or not, or if just this like traumatic death like made them come back as ghosts in the animatronics, like almost like an accident kind of thing. Like, I personally think what happened was like he just hid the kids' bodies in the animatronics, to do it, and then when they ended up, getting up and walking around because they were haunted. Like, he just put on his old like rabbit costume and was like, "Hey kids, remember me? I'm your friend." And he was able to just get them to do his bidding that way. Like, I don't think it was an intentional like witchcraft setup thing. I mean, it could be, but there didn't seem to be a whole lot of support for that, from my perspective at least, in the body of the film.
One thing I will say that I quite enjoyed about that opening credit sequence was how they did show that you had this group of kids and you had this large creature, and it would come greet the kids and walk off with one of them. And then, each time there'd be one less kid. And I'm like, that's kind of a creepy little through line to that opening. And of course, by the end of the movie, it makes perfect sense in the story. But
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. Like, it was, I thought that was so brilliant because, I mean, I knew enough about the story that I knew that's what was going on. And if you're like an adult, I mean, you could, can connect dots, you would probably figure it out too. Although there were quite a few disappointing reviews where it's like, this movie was so bad. Like, what was that thing in the beginning all about? I didn't understand. And it's like, really?
And to be honest, there wasn't an entire total of how many kids the killer actually killed, too. There, I think, were more kids that were killed on the property or around.
Or at least buried there, exactly.
So it just so happens that some of these kids just ended up being implanted in these gigantor animatronic dudes, and because their bodies were stuck in there, they haunted them. So.
Right, and like that intro just was so brilliant for like showing you like what happened without really saying what happened. Like if, like I said, if you didn't know, like it could almost be kind of like, huh, that's a little weird, instead of like, holy shit, this is so creepy and dark.
Yeah, I don't get the hate for it because why wasn't Garrett one of them? He didn't really have to be. So I agree.
Exactly. So like that guy in particular saying that he wanted to see that scene, it's like, that sounds really hokey. Like why would you want that? Like, I mean, I've seen you make fun of like bad movies for having scenes like that. Why did you want that scene? It was just ridiculous, you know. And there was something I thought would have maybe been cool, but again, it was also kind of, I understood why it was not necessary. I thought it would have been like really creepy to have a moment where you get like a glimpse of like one of the bodies inside the animatronics. And some people were like, oh, why not like break one open and have like a skeleton fall out? And it's like, no, you don't even need to do that. Like, I mean, I would, what I personally had in mind for that was something along the lines of, in Chainsaw Massacre 2, when Leatherface is attacking those guys, like wearing the hitchhiker's like mummified body, like as a disguise, they get a shot in on him, and part of the corpse like tilts in a way that you can see Leatherface's mask behind it. And I would have been fine if it's just like one of the animatronics is walking around, and through like a little hole like in the side you can see like a rib or two, like a human rib. Like that would have been good enough for me. But that was another complaint too, that people wanted to see like a lot of like really elaborate stuff, and the movie just did not need it as much. I mean, that was another like admirable thing. Like it knew what it needed to have and what it could imply. But yeah, where are we again?
Let's see. We were talking about the whole Garrett thing.
About Afton, okay.
Let's go back to, I think we had, you had started to talk about, and I think you kind of finished on it, the whole beating down of the security guard. We went into the introduction.
Oh, right. So one of the
Lillard's character.
One of the early theories was like people, before they knew like what his name was, people knew like Purple Guy had killed the children, like, and he was responsible for them, being ghosts in those robots. And some people suggested that the killer was a security guard back in the day, because of the way the animatronics basically recognized the security guard uniform and seemed to always go after people wearing one. So that was a theory as to why the animatronics were trying to kill you in the first game. So it felt like there was a slight recognition of that with that first security guard who, couldn't keep his eyes on the monitors. And they did have a couple of scenes with the monitors from the game. It looked fairly accurate to what I remember as well. So now that was just something I felt that was, again, this has surprisingly dense lore for what feel like pretty minimalist like games. So it felt like every time I recognized something that somebody had said to me once or had implied once, I was like, hey, there it is. So that was an early kind of theory that like the killer was a security guard, and so that's why they were so gung-ho on you in the first game.
Oh yeah.
And also what I thought we might have been seeing in that intro scene where they do like, catch and kill that other security guard. Like that, it felt like that was kind of the representation of the events of the game. So
Okay.
the gameplay, not the story. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But anyway, so in case you're old and confused, did we bring up that Five Nights at Freddy's is basically just like a Chuck E. Cheese with the animated band being evil?
Well, when I was talking to Tammi when we were watching the movie, I was like, I always felt like Freddy's was like ripped off of a Chuck E. Cheese lookalike.
There was another one, wasn't there?
There was no other thing at the time in the 80s than Chuck E. Cheese, I don't think.
I remember.
Wasn't Chuck E. Cheese itself sort of a ripoff of like something that Disney did, like the Country Jamboree or whatever the heck it was?
I mean, I think so. I remember that there was some rival company to Chuck E. Cheese. Like I remember at some point there were two like franchises that were like the same thing, like Chuck E. Cheese and somebody else. And from what I was told, or read, or wherever I got this info from, the other place got bought out by Chuck E. Cheese pretty quick, so they almost weren't around long enough to be remembered.
Yeah, I meant to say in the intro that I definitely, Chuck E. Cheese is something I definitely remember from my childhood. So I have been curious about this partly because of that sort of connection that a lot of people invariably are going to draw. Whether it's fully accurate or not, the connection is there. People will think about it. And the idea of making this something that was huge in the 80s really plays even more into that, because I think Chuck E. Cheese, the heyday was probably like the late 80s going into the 90s, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So that was, I know the last time I was there was in college. We had a big,
They let you in?
Yeah, we had a big dance, and several of my friends and I, before the dance, it was a fancy one where we were all wearing tuxes and all that stuff. We went to Chuck E. Cheese for dinner.
I mean, that sounds pretty funny.
I know when I would go and search for jobs over on Chase Avenue here in Milwaukee from time to time, there's a Chuck E. Cheese right next to the job center place there.
Yeah, I was going to say I've been there before. Yeah, I haven't been inside though, because they have no unaccompanied adults, which makes perfect sense. It's just kind of like,
well, they have a
pizza buffet. What?
They have a pizza buffet that goes on that regular people can go in there and like eat. So I would sometimes eat a pizza buffet from time to time. Because they would just put out various like different pizzas, and there you go. I mean, it's nothing like the Chuck E. Cheese of like the 80s, because at least you had the ball pit and things of that nature. But I do understand why they closed down the ball pits, because they couldn't figure out a way to wash the balls. So
that makes a lot of
it was
sense.
just a matter of time before one angry parent decided to throw a fit and ruin it for everyone else.
I can see somebody getting like salmonella from the ball pit or something though. I mean, I do.
You didn't think about when you were a kid, and I did love the ball pit. That was something I enjoyed, but as an adult looking back, I'm like,
maybe that wasn't so safe. Maybe that wasn't so safe after all. Yeah, or like remembering like the old playgrounds with the with like the wood chips and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's maybe not because you it's just something you accept like as a kid, and then later on you're like, man, I always got splinters when every time I touch the ground. Why do we use those? So, but the last time I was in a Chuck E. Cheese, I was like 13, 14, and I was there for like my younger brother's like birthday party or something. I remember some random girl kissed me. That was probably the only reason I remembered being there at all. Yeah, I've seen that Chuck E. Cheese a few times because I used to go to like UMOS. And there was one time I was like, I haven't been inside one of these in 20 years. I wonder what they're like. And then I saw like the like sign, and it's like, oh, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense that you couldn't just like go hang out in there, because that is kind of weird now that I think about it. But if they have like an actual like pizza thing, I kind of want to check that out. Like, because you hear people joke about, oh, the pizza is terrible. And it's like, is it? I can't remember.
Terrible. It's not terrible. It's more on the lines of like something like Little Sneezer's pizza. I call it Little Sneezer's.
or CC's. Actually, I would say Little Caesars is better than CC's.
CC's closed down up on Highway 100 near us. So, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
We have some place called Pizza Shuttle here that's pretty fantastic.
I have not eaten
Well, I'll
there
tell
in
you
years.
one thing.
I found a great pizzeria last week I'd never heard of called Zorth. It's good stuff.
Ooh,
I never actually went to Chuck E. Cheese.
You never actually went to Chuck E. Cheese?
Wow.
No.
You poor woman.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but it was something of the 80s you would have had to have enjoyed at one point in time, going to a birthday party at least at Chuck E. Cheese, because when you have a birthday party there and it's planned and they bring all the pizza there, it's a smorgasbord,
Well, I never got to enjoy that. I never was at Chuck E. Cheese.
But,
I don't know if it helps, but if you want to stimulate a good 60% of the experience, you can go have like an event at Dave & Buster's. It's kind of.
There's also at Southridge that round one, which isn't too bad. I've been there a couple of times.
I gotta remember to do that place sometime. I think I went there for like a birthday once, and it was like, yeah, this is pretty cool, but it wasn't quite. I don't know. It felt like less of a restaurant and more of just like an arcade, which is cool. It was just kind of, I was more into like food at the time, I think. But I mean, about pizza places aside, so I mean, so Mike has his first night at well, I guess we need to touch on the subplot of like their aunt, like who keeps wanting to adopt, who wants to like start taking care of Abby, and their aunt, she is terrible. Like, we get into her first.
Yeah, I didn't like her at all. She was not a cool character.
Right, and she's supposed to be unlikable because she's kind of low key one of the other villains of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we even get some background on that from Abby. It's like, I don't like her. She's mean and she smells like cigarettes. And it's like, she does look like she would smell like cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah, you could say that. And it's like I made the point earlier, like, Dustin, this might have been before you came on. That lawyer of hers looks like he is not happy to be working for her.
No.
He looks really nervous because they don't really use him for much.
No.
Which is a bit of a shame because he was funny as hell.
Oh, so that's what I recognize.
I don't think you should really be here for this. Sit down.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I wondered, like, I've been trying to remember. Mary Stuart Masterson is one of the names in the cast that I recognized right away, but I couldn't quite place it. And now I'm realizing in the early 90s, She was one of the main characters in Fried Green Tomatoes. She played the title character along with Johnny Depp in Benny and June. She starred in Radioland Murders. That's 3 pretty cool credits right there. And now she's playing a bitch that you just don't want to see in this movie. But funny thing is, I was watching a video for Benny and June just earlier today, so that's appropriate. But yeah, she is a piece of work. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I do kind of wish we had gotten some sort of closure with the lawyer.
Yeah,
he was pretty funny in like every scene in the few scenes that he was included in.
yeah,
It's like,
the one that I think Dave alluded to, where they're discussing, they're planning a B&E. They're basically, it turns out that Max and I guess her brother have been working for these people. And up until then, we thought Max was just this really great, reliable babysitter, basically. But apparently she's, a mole for the aunt. But
she almost felt like she could have been like a love interest at some point, because it was sort of framed like she might have been like into him and just not said anything yet.
I think she might have been a little bit. She definitely did have actual affection for Abby. That was pretty clear. And that's like when she gets it, I was sad. I was like, well, she didn't deserve that.
I don't think she had actual affection for Abby. It was just an acting.
Well, she was a good actress. Let's put it that way. And compared to Jeff, I think was the guy with her. He, I'm guessing if I'm remembering correctly, but I'm looking at this picture. It looks like him. That guy obviously was just in it for the money and just, but yeah, they're sitting there discussing, like they've had her basically taking advantage of her position to snoop through his stuff, to try and find incriminating evidence and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't work. So they're like, well, let's break in and trash the joint. And the lawyer's like, I shouldn't be here for this. She's like, sit down.
It's like, yeah, I hired you to get dirt on him, and all you've been able to tell me is, how much that he sleeps a lot and that he's really nice. Well, he does, and he is. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I don't know, you kind of like, she's still going along, like, you do feel bad for her, but at the same time, she still is going along with the, ruin Mike's life even more, like, plot. So it's kind of, when she does get basically eaten by Freddy, it's kind of like, I'm not too upset.
Yeah.
I did kind of have that reaction at first, because it's like, oh, you were kind of nice. And then I stopped and thought about it, and it's like, well, I mean, maybe you weren't, if you were actually, down for this plan.
And I'll admit, like, again, with what brought a lot of people to the table for this movie, I will admit that is one of the cooler kills. It's kind of crazy, but it's the way they did it. I hate to say amused me, but it was interesting.
It could be funny. Like, I mean, have you seen most of the Friday the 13th? Well, maybe funny is the wrong word there, but yeah, after a point, you're going to those movies to see the kills, like not anything else, really. So, I mean, I thought the ones that we got on camera were pretty good. I mean, it's mostly just, the cupcake, like, mauling people. We don't even see what the blue bunny, like, does to that one guy. He's just screaming and blood's flying.
And there was no one that made the joke. In Soviet Russia, cupcake eats you.
I'm happy that did not happen. So I am kind of confused as to what the cupcake was, though, because it was its own separate animatronic, and I don't think it had a child in it. So that was that's something I think I'm going to have to research on my own later. But, I mean, Mike's first night is pretty uneventful the way it is actually in the game. And this was another thing that somebody pointed out. We see, like, his shift ends at 6 a.m. the way it does in the game. And we see 6 a.m. kind of shown a lot, like, on clocks in the background and stuff. So I thought that was just kind of like a fun little throw in. So, a lot of people have said this movie was made for the fans with like a lot of details like that for them to notice. And so far that really seems to hold true. So few people that are like that have said, you know, oh yeah, I'm a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, you know, and I hated this movie. Like you don't see that take very often. Like people who knew the story and the lore and stuff going into this all seem to really love it and really appreciate that. I mean, I know that's not everyone, but yeah, I guess I'm just kind of commenting on some of like the Easter eggs and stuff, which I will not pretend I know enough about like to catch all of them, but that is one that somebody had pointed out to me.
Well, like I came into this a complete noob. But I could still, from what you're saying, it sounds like it was loaded with Easter eggs. And this is like, I mean, I can't compare it to like, say, for example, the Mario Brothers movie, which I was familiar with quite a few of the Easter eggs, and I was able to appreciate those as they came along. But it is kind of fun to have that. I probably would have made it's sounding like I would have gotten more out of the movie if I had any familiarity with it beforehand. That might be the case. I kind of came to a blind, and it was like, it was a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough to hold up on its own. But I think we've probably realized from just the information like we've all been able to see that expectations were kind of the big issue with a lot of this. Like people expected, thought it would be like one thing or the other, or and having those kind of mismatched expectations is what led to a lot of the complaints.
Sounds like a lot of people wanted it to be a slasher when it's kind of a mixture of things.
It's more of a supernatural suspense movie, really, more than anything, I would say.
Well, and honestly, Matthew Lillard has signed on for 2 other movies, from what I hear. So there's definitely plenty of room for them to go that gory if they want to, if they're able to do a second one, and if at least not a third, just to see where they go.
Supposedly, Jason Blum has said that the movie more than made back its budget just on who they were able to sell it to for distribution. So the likelihood that they're going to move forward with at least one sequel, I'd say that's almost a given.
I thought they had already confirmed. It's like, yeah, we're doing a second one. We don't know what it'll be about yet. Like that was what I had heard, but I don't know where I heard that. So just covering my base.
Well, I saw something going around that Matthew Lillard has actually let people know that he's signed on for 3. So that's at least a plus.
Yeah, they said something about that on the IMDb page. Yeah.
But,
yeah, and he's I mean, he could actually come back. Yeah, he's well, the movie ends with him becoming an animatronic himself. He becomes Springtrap, which the way people talk about Springtrap is like the major villain of the series, I guess. Let's put it this way. So killers in Dead by Daylight are, like slasher characters, or, well, they're all like slashers and murderers and just monsters, really. And whenever people were like, "Oh yeah, we want a Five Nights at Freddy's, killer," the Five Nights at Freddy's killer they always suggest is Springtrap. Like, there's nobody else; it's always Springtrap. So, he would basically be the killer in Dead by Daylight if they did do a Freddy's chapter. And that says a lot to me about, okay, so he does do stuff later on in the narrative. So, like, there is plenty of reason he would be back.
Yep. I don't think that this film deserves all the hate that it seems to be getting from people. From what you say, it's getting some flack, from people who went into it thinking whatever, But
People
I don't think it deserves
expecting it
all
to be
that.
completely like different. It's like, I expected Five Nights at Freddy's, not, my brother disappeared as a child. It's like, dude, why do you? It's relevant. Like that's it's such a dumb fucking complaint. Like it seriously is. Like I don't know, it kind of makes me mad almost. I mean, yeah, there are some things you can criticize that don't necessarily make perfect sense. Like pick something valid.
What do we think about the cop, Vanessa?
Yeah,
What's
we
her name?
meet Vanessa pretty shortly too. She's a cop who's just kind of patrolling that part of town, and she knows about Freddy's. She knows a little too much about Freddy's, which at least Mike picks up on like right away. She's like, "I heard they had a new security guard. I thought I'd come check on you." And like she's kind of an interesting character because I mean she knows the full story behind it. But she's kind of grown up under the shadow of the killer, so that it seems like it seems like she's a good cop who genuinely like does her job, but at the same time is just completely like helpless against like her father turns out to be the killer, and she just can't stand up to him or like bring herself to turn him in. Like it feels like there's some complexity there that I don't have the words for right now. What do you think, Jake?
Well, there is something that becomes, of course, a point later on where they're able to defeat Atherton basically by turning the animatronics against him. He seems to be like in another life, he probably would have been a cult leader. Like he seems to have this innate ability to just manipulate people just to a tremendous degree. And I am a little unclear, and this was one of those things I was kind of thinking about earlier, where I was talking about how things are just a bit too neatly set up here. It's very interesting that his daughter ended up becoming a cop who happens to have this place on her beat. And she's kind of, y'all were saying earlier about Max is going along with it, so she's still complicit. His daughter, Vanessa, she's clearly a decent person. She clearly cares about Abby and Mike and wants to help them. But she is clearly very complicit. And the fact that she is a cop and he is still at large means that she is very complicit. And you have to wonder how much of her career path was due to his direct manipulation. Did she become a cop to act out, but then fall back under his control, and that's why she's looking out for his interests? It's some tough questions there too. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, she definitely seems like a decent person who is very actively complicit in some not decent things, basically.
Yeah, I mean that was mostly my read. Although I do think it's also along the lines of like she's still so scared of him from like her experiences, being his child and growing up like with him. That she just seems so paralyzed whenever she has to try to stand up to him. And she does at the end, and she pays for it pretty much right away, but she pulls it off. Like, even at the end, he's like, "You actually shot me? What?" It's like the last thing he expected her to be able to do.
But that fully tracks with the idea of him being a cult leader type, because that's typically one of the things that they do to keep people in line, is to intimidate and cause fear.
Exactly. And he seems like he was a real expert at that too. I mean, I would assume that's how he like lured his victims to their doom initially as well. By just
All
being
I
like,
know
"Hey."
is I was wondering what she had to do with it, because she knew so much about the place and so much about what went on and this and that and everything. It's like, okay. What does she have to do with this place? It was like, when are you going to get to the how she knows all this?
Right. And like we didn't have to wait, I don't think, like a too long period of time. I mean, there is kind of a lot of moving parts to this, and I know we're probably going a little long, but hey, it's part of the fun.
Yep.
But anyway, so I mean, we're introduced to Vanessa, and Vanessa gives him some kind of cryptic sounding. She basically gives him some cryptic warnings, but I don't think he fully understands what she's referring to yet. And it's not really until he's forced to bring Abby to his job because, the babysitter's suddenly missing. Oh, that's weird. That he really fully interacts with the animatronics. However, he has such strong memories of his brother's abduction that he's been trying to use like active dreaming to see if he can remember any details about the case or the crime. Like, he's convinced that he did see like the killer's face in that moment, and he just can't remember. So that's why his sleep is so messed up, because he just spends all his nights having the same dream of that event and trying to notice new details. Which, when he tries doing that at Freddy's, it's like because Garrett has a connection to their killer, and because he's in the place like where the ghosts live, I think that's how he's able to see the kids who became the animatronics in his dreams and is able to start interacting with them, because his dream doesn't really change. We see that dream of that memory a few times, and then this is the first time in the film that it's different. Like the kids from who disappeared in the intro are there, and that really kind of kicks off the rest of the narrative, where like there's something here that can help him solve that mystery.
Oh yeah.
And eventually, it like we said earlier too, it is implied that Abby has some degree of that ability too, because like she interprets things by drawing. Like, they explain this at her school. They say it's like a children thing too. That's like nonverbal communication, like with drawings and images.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a cool payoff for that later, because, well, we'll get to that when we get to that. But like Abby being there, like around the ghosts, like really sets something off, because the ghosts are still children, and
all they really do is they want to play.
Exactly, like they have like another child to like just kind of relax around.
They've never had a chance to grow up, neither. So in their mind, what they're doing is playing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they are still children. What was that? You were saying something, and it sounded like you cut out.
Which is what children do. I mean, there's an episode of Star Trek. I think it's the movie. I think it's Star Trek First Contact, where Data meets this kid that's part of the people that are part of the land, and he asks Data, if you ever want to learn what it's like to be a kid, you need to learn how to play. And to me, that's kind of like the whole mindset set of what it is to be a child. You have to have an imagination. You have to be able to play, like play in a sandbox, things of that nature.
Exactly, and I think that was another thing that some people got annoyed with too, like that sequence where like he's forced to bring Abby to work, and she ends up, being the animatronics and not being afraid of them, but just kind of meeting them, where they are as fellow children. And we get kind of a fake out scare with that, where she's screaming, and it's like, oh no, they were just like messing around. But some people were like, oh, why are they building a fort? Why are they being kids? It's like, well, they are kids. I mean, if they weren't in an aggressive mood, it makes sense that they would do that. Like it's one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, I see why that happened. And somebody's like, well, what's the reason for it? It's like, I don't know how to explain that to you. Like, I feel like you should just know. It was, I don't know, that was a fun sequence though. It's like, see, they can be somewhat friendly.
Oh, when they built the fort and
the whole sequence where after Abby like finds out they're alive and Mike finds out they're alive, Mike adjusts to it pretty quick. He's like, they're alive. He's like, he just talks to her about it, and he's like, are they ghosts? Well, how else would they move? Okay. And Mike just kind of goes with it very quickly, which I sort of appreciate it. There's not like a long like period of skepticism, which a lot of times in movies, like with situations like this, that would annoy me if it's like, oh, well, there's got to be a logical explanation for this clearly like supernatural thing I just saw. Like that's actually, I think that's one of the reasons I hate The Exorcist, honestly, because there is such a stretch of it where it's like, well, there's got to be a rational explanation for this. It's like you saw her head spin around and fly off. Like what are you doing? Like be serious. It's like anyway, though, so we get kind of like a few moments of peace where it's like, oh, they actually really like Abby's company, and so later on, that sets up later on like the deal that they try to offer Mike, and it's really kind of fun because they play on his insecurities very hard in that moment. It's like, well, you never could have taken care of her anyway. You can dream that you were able to save your brother and that everything is fine. You can dream that every night. Isn't that what you always wanted? Just give us the girl. Like we want new friends here. And it's kind of I can't think of other examples like of stories that use that, but that is kind of a trope that you see in other stories sometimes, where it's like the Faustian deal kind of thing. And Mike is just kind of so freaked out that he actually says yes before suddenly remembering, wait a minute, no, you can't do that. But then they're like, too late. And so they come for him and put him in the chair. I keep getting ahead of myself, though. I mean, it's important to note, like, there's an accident that happens, and does Abby almost get shocked, or does Abby get shocked? I think she gets shocked.
Yeah, she does get shocked from when she strummed that guitar on the one.
The faulty one.
Yeah, and Vanessa knows that these things are dangerous, whereas Mike thinks they're creepy, but he doesn't know what they are yet, and neither does Abby. So it's kind of a surprise. It's a surprise to both of them when like she gets hurt that way.
Well, it's actually, I feel like it was already set up. Like that wasn't necessarily anything involved with the ghosts or an aggression. I think it was just a faulty piece of equipment. That guitar tends to spark. You saw it earlier in the film.
Yeah,
It
Yeah.
was from an old string on a guitar, and I think that those were actually real guitar strings. Those animatronics have been there for a while, so it's not that far of a stretch that if she strummed it, it would snap. But because it's connected to electricity, it was kind of a given that once she snapped one of those strings, a spark of electricity would like float.
yeah,
through.
and I mean that makes sense. It was for me that was just kind of they were too relaxed around them because they didn't know that they could be
dangerous
one way or another. Like, you know, through like I mean that was a faulty wire and not necessarily like conscious on their part, but it was also like it also showed that they weren't really very careful around them when they should have been. And Vanessa kind of flips out on Mike. It's like, you know, you want to gamble with your own life, fine, but if you bring her here again, I will shoot you. And it's like, damn, it's very aggressive. But anyway, so then we do have that dream sequence. Like things are getting kind of bad. Like the aunt is really pressuring Mike, and Mike ends up leaving Abby with the aunt, who's just kind of awful. And
Abby gets upset with him like right at the get go. Like she thinks that he did the worst, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so this is kind of where we go into finale mode, where our third act kicks off and we find out more about what happened. So it starts with, you know, Mike having that dream and at first accepting and then immediately like rejecting the deal that the ghosts tried to make with him. And they attack him pretty much right away after that. Like he's able to fend off the cupcake. He doesn't get away from Foxy though. Like Foxy does that. So you've actually played the game, Dave. Foxy does that before he attacks you in the game, right?
Yeah,
that's what I remember.
One thing he did do was he threw some water down on the stage and then electrocuted two of them. Right?
We're not quite there yet.
Oh,
where after he's told the kids no, and then in the dream, like they all scatter, and then they just start running at him, and like they swipe at him, and he gets cut. Like in the dream world, they don't seem to have weapons, but somehow they're able to like hurt him all the same.
Well, yeah, he's got several dream sequences, and he basically tells these dream kids that he will basically do anything to get his brother back, or at least that's what I think he wants. He wants his brother back. He wants. I'm not even sure he knows what he wants out of the whole situation, but him and the cop had Vanessa ended up having a talk. That
Vanessa rescues him from Foxy like right after the scene I was talking about, because after he rejects their deal, like he realizes that, you know, you need to take care of the family you have. I mean, you can't save your brother, he's gone. And he realizes that too late after he agreed to give them Abby. And that's when they attack him. And he's in the same position as a security guard at the beginning, where he's trying to get out the back door. And, you know, Foxy does that really creepy, like, dum, 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 before, like, coming after him. And it seems like Vanessa shows up and, like, pulls him out of there, like, just in time. Like, aside from Gold and Freddy, it's suggested that they can't really leave the building or, like, go very far from it. So it seems like if you're, like, standing outside, like, the door, you might be fine. Because they didn't go out and get Max. Like, they had to wait for her to wander inside.
Yeah, that is true. And I think I told Tammi, don't you think it would have been a good idea for her to stay in the fucking car?
Right. I mean, it seems like they can kind of ghost project, though, because Max does, like, follow one of the kid ghosts inside. It's like, over here. It's like, wait, what is that? But anyway, so that's when Vanessa like finally tells us what's up. Like Vanessa has patched him up, and she explains, you know, the guy who took your brother, like he was a really bad man. You know, he was my father. He was responsible for like the disappearances of the children. And, you know, the reason they're ghosts is because he hid their bodies in the animatronics. And I thought the delivery on that was pretty good. I mean, some people were like, well, duh, that's why they're ghosts, you know. Why did you deliver that line like that? You know, it's not just their ghosts in those machines, it's their bodies. And I thought that was really like effective and creepily done, but some people were still bitchy. It's like, well, where else would the bodies be? Lol, ho, 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 ho. I figured everything out. It's like,
well, she did kind of point out that in one of those storage units, while they were while she was trying to find some tablecloths in to make the fort, that hey, don't touch that those springs inside those mechanics. They can spring fast on you, and she showed him because she took the end of a broomstick and pushed it into the chest of this one that was just laying on the floor, and it snapped it like somewhat in two, and he was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, the locking mechanisms that keep the animatronics together are basically just like bear traps. Like I still can't figure out the mechanical reason you would need that. Like in the film, they say it's to keep the animatronics in place to protect somebody in case they wanted to wear the suit. And at the same time, it's like it doesn't look too protective. That seems really. I'm gonna need a diagram of how this protects you from anything. But anyway, so that was just another crazy complaint people had. That they were like, oh, why would anybody be surprised at that? And it's like, whatever. I don't know. People just threw out their fucking brains when it came to criticizing this movie in a lot of ways, because, I mean, I would criticize, why does the animatronic need those specifically? It's like, that's a little, I mean, were they designed to be, like, dangerous or to have like bodies put in them? Like that is something I would, you know, point out. Whereas
I'm not sure
people
that you were here when Jake talked about the fact that the animatronics were actually done by the Jim Henson Creature Shop people. So.
And they looked great. They were like perfect.
Indeed.
But anyway. So, like, Vanessa dropped that backstory on us, and that's when we see Golden Freddy show up at Mike's house to, like, pick up Abby. Like, he appears to her, like, we first see him just kind of hanging out behind the ant, like Michael Myers getting ready to do a kill. And, you know, that sequence happens pretty fast. Like, it is kind of hard to tell that this is a different Freddy. Like, even though there is a line where Abby's like, Freddy? And the ghost child is like, no. Like, if he had just been like, you know, I'm someone else, like, I think that would have been clearer to a lot of people. But you have to look at their faces. I mean, they're both like the bear costume. They're both the bear animatronic, but one is pretty messed up and the other one is very clean. And the clean Freddy is the one we see most of the time. So I can see why people got confused. It was just kind of, you know, that was one of the things that they could have done better.
That was something that I noticed but didn't notice. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I saw it and it just didn't register as important. I don't know why. But I do remember that exchange, her saying Freddy and them saying no. Like, I remember that, but it was weird. Makes more sense now.
Yeah, and so like, it's not. I think Golden Freddy killed the ant, but it's not 100% clear to me. I mean, we only see like a bit of her, like whenever this does come out, like on physical media, I personally really hope we get some like extra footage or like an unrated cut or something, which I don't know if they would have even filmed sequences for that. But it was something I would like to get some clarifications, like, did the ant die?
I agree.
But at any rate, like Golden Freddy like tears up knocks out, at the very least, knocks out the ant. And we kind of this has YouTuber cameos in it, like people who are, I guess, famous for Five Nights at Freddy's content. The first one is, I think the guy's name is Matt Pat. Like, it's sort of funny. Like, I don't know any of these dudes' names or what they look like because my consumption of YouTube is completely different. So I don't watch stuff like that. But like our first one was the guy in the diner, who's like, "It's just a theory." Like apparently that's his catchphrase. From what I understand, he's responsible for a lot of the really long like lore theory videos on Five Nights at Freddy's. And then our next cameo that I know of comes in this scene here, where Golden Freddy is taking Abby back to Freddy's because they're going to try and make her into an animatronic too.
Is it the taxi driver?
Yeah, it's the taxi driver. The taxi driver is some other YouTuber whose name I really wish I remembered. But anyway, so we get kind of that like joke moment where they're in the taxi and he's just kind of like, well, we get the almost like 90s comedy moment of like the taxi driver being like, "Whoa, what?" when the car like buckles under the weight of the animatronic getting in, and he looks in the backseat and he's like, "Ah," because there's this 9-foot robot with like missing eyes.
Yeah.
He's like, "That's not funny," because he just thinks it's a dude in a costume.
Well, it's like, why do I always get the freaks or some shit like that?
Yeah.
I was wondering how the taxi knew to be there to begin with.
Yeah, that was another hole too. It's like, did Freddy
somehow like
all the taxi?
Well, am I imagining this? I feel like he was sitting there off duty, wasn't he?
He might have been, actually. That's a good point.
I feel like he was off duty, and that's why he got annoyed when she got in the car. Like, it's something like, I'm not. I don't know. I could be, again, you can take what I say with a grain of salt at this point, but that's what I remember happening. But yeah.
I mean, that's even though I've seen this a bunch of times, there are things I've still missed. So, I mean, that very well could have been the case. Like, I buy that.
To be honest, the taxi driver comes back in the credits with a scene that I will forever remember for this movie.
That was great.
That was like the best thing of this movie to me.
That was a fun callback.
Yeah, because during some of Mike's first nights at Freddy's, he's just kind of like walking around, like looking around, and he opens a locker and there's like nothing there. And he opens it again like later, and there's this really creepy like figure, like statue thing in there. It's called Balloon Boy, which I did not know until I looked it up. And he's just like, ah. And from what I understand, Balloon Boy like does that in the game. Like he's not like, he can't kill you. He doesn't like try to kill you or anything, but he does just like pop up and freak you out. And so we got that Balloon Boy like thing at the end too, where it's like, I mean, I made the crack. It's like somebody was like, well, why wasn't Garrett in one of the animatronics? And I was like, maybe he was in Balloon Boy. And I personally like that idea, but not 100% like necessary for that to be the case. He can just be like a creepy thing that's there too. And at the end, like the taxi guy is just like parked around. He's got like something over his eyes, and like the door opens and closes, and he's like, "Hey, like I'm not, no, not now." And he looks, and it's just like Balloon Boy is just like on the seat. And it's like, how did he open that door? Which that was fun. Anyway, moving on to our big confrontation. So Afton is kind of pushing the kids to try and kill Abby, and Mike shows up to save her pretty much just in the nick of time. Like Vanessa's kind of too afraid to go in there too, but she does like give Mike like a lot of gear, including like that taser and stuff, and he's able to knock out Freddy and I'm kind of upset that I can't remember like the blue rabbit's name.
Chica or
Chica's there's Chica, Foxy, Freddy. Chica is the chicken.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the blue bunny's name is. Anybody?
Trying to remember. Let's see. I'm looking it up.
Well, either way, like Mike has the idea to like just dump a bucket of water on the stage because it's almost like they're kind of like celebrating. It's like, yeah, we got her. Like they're just going through the motions of their like animatronics playing music thing on the stage. And they think they hear him. They look over like, huh? And he shoots the taser into the puddle, and it works pretty good. Like it totally fries them and shuts them down for a while. They actually seem to need to be supernaturally revived by Afton later. Like, so that was a really effective method of like putting them down. So I saw some people being like, why don't they just run over there and like knock its head off with a bat? And it's like, well, you've seen the insides of those things. They're pretty, they have pretty strong looking like metal endoskeletons. Like, I don't think you could just run up to Freddy and like, pop his head off with a baseball bat. Like, I feel like that would not work. It's like some people are like, oh, why don't they just like punt Chucky? And it's like, well, yeah, you can, but he's kind of heavy. You might not do much. But anyway, so Mike is able to run in just as Chica is trying to. The animatronic Chica's trying to put Abby in is a character from one of the later games. I don't remember her name, but that was also kind of a fun like recognition of that. Like Abby figures out Chica's evil, kind of a little too late. He's like, what's that? And then Chica starts trying to like stuff her into like the clearly like lethal trap looking thing. And Mike shows up and like tases Chica. And they're trying to escape from the place. And I can't remember if
it might be Bonnie.
What?
Bonnie? Does that sound right?
That does sound right.
Okay.
Anyway, so I can't quite remember what happens first. Like if
I believe what happens first is he
Mike runs into the yellow bunny, and Abby is having to escape from Foxy by hiding in the ball pit. Like, I think from what it's hard to remember the exact sequence of events, but I think like they get separated. Like,
she's already taken to Freddy's. He shows up a little bit afterwards.
No, I'm talking about after Mike rescues her from Chica. Because it's like I remember because Abby is hiding from Foxy is the only animatronic that's not like incapacitated by getting shocked. And so Foxy, he was hiding from Foxy in the ball pit, and I can't remember how they got separated.
After he rescues her from Chica, I think it's Cupcake that comes after him.
Yeah. The Cupcake grabs his leg and starts chomping,
and she runs off.
Yeah.
She runs into the main room.
Okay, and then she has to hide from Foxy in the ball pit. And
Right.
he's able to knock the Cupcake out with that stun gun, that's right. And then he comes in, and that's when we run into the yellow bunny.
Lady Vanessa, she ends up taking out Foxy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get a really cool villain reveal of William Afton. That was another really kind of sick moment that I forgot to touch on earlier when she's giving the backstory of like Will Afton like killed all those children. He's my father. She shows a picture of like her like with the guy, and she's holding like in all of Mike's dreams with Garrett, like with flashbacks. Garrett has like this really specific toy plane, and in the picture, like as a child, she's holding Garrett's plane. So after her dad killed Garrett, she just gave her his plane, which is I mean that moment kind of says a lot without having to do much on screen. I don't know. I thought that was really I think I actually said out loud, "God damn," because like Mike puts it together himself too right away. Like,
yeah, that was the moment where I think where it fully clicked into place with him.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like full confirmation. Why am I somehow connected to these other victims? And it did also imply that Garrett body was hidden somewhere on the premises. Because like if the plane's there, what else is there? But anyway,
there are other animatronics that are and pieces laying around on the floor. There's nothing that says that Garrett could be in like one of these other animatronics.
The ones that we didn't see, yeah. And I mean, even like Golden Freddy, like we don't see him. Aside from that one scene where he goes to retrieve Abby, but we do see his like ghost kid form in the dream like each time almost. So yep. I mean, he's lurking around. So I mean, it does suggest that there are other things there, and people were like, "Why didn't we see everything the first time?" Like, come on, man.
Because then it leaves room for sequels.
Exactly. Anyway, so then we get our big villain reveal of Afton, coming in like in the what will become the Springtrap suit, but for now he's just like the yellow bunny. He's just the yellow rabbit, which is how everybody's been referring to him as the yellow rabbit till this point. And that is a scary looking suit. Like, what do we think of the reveal there? Like, and how they did that?
Well, they definitely made the bunny suit a hell of a lot more of a mechanism. I mean, he looked a little bit more scarier with the half-eaten bunny ear coming out. And yeah, even though it looked like dirty or whatnot, it still was menacing. So I thought that it was an interesting reveal, and that the guy who gave him the job ended up being the killer, So,
yeah, and it made sense too. It's like he wants somebody to he probably does want somebody to just watch the place, and make sure. Well, according to my friend Andrew, with the lore we had at the time, like. I think I pointed out when Andrew told me what Five Nights at Freddy's was about, I was like, why would those robots, if those killer robots are just lurking in there all the time, like, why would it need guards? Like, and Andrew pointed out, it's like, well, maybe how do you keep them in? It's like, oh, okay. It's not to keep people out, it's to make sure those don't escape.
well, yeah, they should stay within their little world, and none of the security guards can ever look too closely, or else they.
Or if they did, they probably got killed right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, somebody pointed out, it's like, wouldn't they smell? Like, wouldn't somebody be? Some people who wanted to see like the bodies in the suits, some of them were like, couldn't a character have commented on, it's like, wow, these suits smell kind of weird, because of decayed corpse. Which I can kind of buy that. Maybe that would have been a good compromise for people who really did want to see like more nastiness, for lack of a better term. But on the other hand, it had been a while. Like, I don't know if after a point, I think the bodies would have dried out and probably not smelled too crazy.
It might have still smelled off. I mean, it might have been weird. It might not have been. Oh, it'd be pretty rank right at first, obviously.
Yeah, but it's like, why am I smelling like mold? Why do I smell like dust and mold? That's kind of odd. It would have been probably a lot more like subtle than, like rotting corpse is hard to ignore, but
right.
20-year-old rotted corpse, I mean,
I think, like you said, maybe more of a musty smell. It would, like an old, what are we trying to say? But you know the idea. It's it wouldn't smell fresh and rank unless they had a recent victim. Or at least
right. That was another thing people complained about. That was just kind of like, really, and that was a important point to bring up, I think. But anyway, so we get kind of like a villain monologue from Afton. It's like, yeah, I killed your brother years ago, and just like, they do a really good job of making him like a really like, he really enjoyed being a killer, like disgusting kind of person.
Well, and he's not as like skinny as he used to be at one point in time. He's got some thickness to his face. So I think
a little.
Yeah, just a little.
The suit does still fit him.
Yeah.
But it does seem like it's a little tighter than it maybe used to be. Like that reveal of like Matthew Lillard, because we have no idea he's really Afton until that point where he just sort of takes the helmet off. Like at first Mike is like, oh, it's just another animatronic, and he tries to use the taser on it, and the taser just kind of bounces off, and that's our first clue that it's like, oh. So I mean, he does get like this really crazy music cue to like let us know it's like be extra afraid of this one. So I mean, I really liked that whole thing they did with that.
Yeah, and he's about to take Mike out, but something happens. I think it's the Vanessa who kind of intervenes and holds a gun to him, and
yeah, Vanessa actually stands up to her dad for like the first time.
What are you having a temper tantrum?
Yeah, he's just like mocking her. It's like, I own you. What are you gonna do? And she actually does shoot him. And like we said earlier, he seems so surprised that she actually stood up to him for the first time. Because I think it's something to the effect of, I think Vanessa definitely feels guilty about like all the children that her father killed that she had no ability to do anything about, or even years later, like she just can't. She's so afraid of him, like the idea of like turning him in like doesn't even occur to her. And I think what makes it different this time is that like the victims are like right there, like in front of her.
And I think she actually kind of cares about the victims that are there. So
I think she always cared. It was just kind of a learned helplessness sort of thing. And so, I mean, she finally sends it to her dad. Like, she only manages to shoot him in the shoulder, though, and he stabs her pretty good. So, like, we later see that, you know, she lived through that.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's in the hospital, which I felt pretty good about. Like, that would have really bummed me out if Vanessa had, like, died.
Am I remembering correctly? I feel like, yeah, he expressed surprise that she shot him. I seem to remember him actually saying, "I'm proud of you." Like, he actually, like, she was able to do that, and he was impressed about it. Surprised, not happy, but impressed.
Probably didn't know she had it in her.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
finally standing up to me or something like that, right?
Right.
If you remember some line, I just wish I remembered it better.
Day for you to stay toe to toe with me.
Let's see.
And he like gives them he gives like a command too. It's like, wake up, children, it's time to play, and they all revive from being like shorted out.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah.
Oh, and there was another nice little synchronicity too. In the first part where Raglan offers the job to Mike, he's like, "You just have to do one thing." You know, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, you just have to do one thing. You just look after the place and tidy up a little. And Mike is a little smartass. He's like, "That's two." And then later he confronts Vanessa. He's like, "You had one job. Keep him in the dark. Kill him if he gets too close." And she's like, "That's two." I was kind of amused by that.
That's great. Like I had forgotten that that he said it to that happened with Mike too. Like that's great. But anyway, this is where we like at this climax here. Like earlier, we saw Vanessa staring at the wall of like kids' drawings, which I wonder if some of those were made like post mortem, like by the ghosts.
Yeah,
because the one in the middle is like the yellow rabbit, like all holding everybody's hand, and like he looks like their friend. And it's said it's kind of somewhere between said and implied that they don't have memories of like who they were. They remember that they died, but they don't remember how or why. And like they look at the pictures on the wall, and that's like their memories. It's like, oh, we do what the yellow rabbit says because he's our friend. You know,
and actually,
not remembering.
I don't know that there was any indication one way or the other, but I was thinking about this as we were talking. And I can't help but wondering if I doubt Raglan himself did it, but I wonder if he had Vanessa make that drawing when she was a kid to help cement his control over them.
Maybe that could have been it, actually. Or I wonder if it's possible that Vanessa was having the same dreams and seeing the same kids.
Possible, yeah.
That's possible.
Because it was very similar to Abby's drawings.
But the fact that it was such a central spot on the board, and it just seems like
she did mention that like she knew what the dreams were doing for him. Like if he could go back and change things, like she knew something, you know. So it's very possible that she knew about, you know, the manipulation of dreams, of what could happen. Like maybe she'd had dreams herself.
Yeah, she seemed to be kind of freaking out a little bit too. Like it was bringing back her own bad memories. Which I would assume just being in like the pizzeria would do that. But anyway, so this is where we get like like we've been saying, like our full circle moment from the first act where the teacher's talking about children processing like things through images. And Mike the last piece of the puzzle kind of clicks into place for Mike, where he's like, you have to show them what happened. You know, and he has Abby, you know, draw a depiction of, you know, the yellow rabbit killing them. You know, to get them to remember. And while Afton is busy like stabbing Vanessa and like threatening Mike and gloating, Abby's able to draw this picture really fast, and they replace like the happy Yellow Rabbit holding everybody's hands with Yellow Rabbit with like a mean face and a bloody knife like killing all the kids. And Afton doesn't really catch that they're doing that until it's way too late for it to matter. Like it was kind of funny because it seemed like he was he was almost like a mastermind kind of character, and did not know this was a way he could be defeated.
No, he definitely did not realize that this was a way he could be.
Yeah, because they finally remembered. Like, wait, you killed us.
I had not foreseen that.
Yeah, it revived their memories, and that was a fun way to, what seems like a throwaway line from the first act, like being like so important in the last act. I appreciate stuff like that sometimes, and I thought it worked great here. Again, that was another thing some people were so confused by because apparently they were on their phone like the entire runtime and didn't listen to any dialogue, which is, I think, the only way you could have missed some of this stuff. But anyway, so they turn on him. Like they've been doing this thing where like their eyes kind of glow red when they're in like murder mode. Mm-hmm. Their eyes all glow red at him, and he's just kind of like yelling at them and like trying to berate them. It's like, you're miserable creatures. You're all freaks. You will do what I say. And they just kind of surround him, and the cupcake jumps on him and just takes like a good chomp like out of his side. And that triggers like it opens the costume up a little bit, and we can see inside where those spring locks are indeed just kind of like being a frame that the costume, to help the costume fit on his body. But the cupcake biting them like triggers the springs, and they just stab really deep like into his guts. Like we don't see a lot of like blood detail on it, but it looks like it hurts so bad you don't even need to see any blood. Mm-hmm. Like that was one thing I thought they really sold, was just kind of like how nasty that would be.
Well, it's like getting your rib cages cracked too, except bleeding internally.
Yeah, he's getting his ribs crushed, and those things are like driving what looks like 8 or so inches into his body. So it would be
he keeps saying something like, "It's okay, I always come back."
And that is an allusion to, like, he does come back as Springtrap, because that's what the yellow bunny is. Although Springtrap usually looks pretty like rotted and decayed, but because this is just now happening in the film continuity, that suit looks pretty clean and like recent. So he's not. So I don't know if he like. I mean, if you're familiar with the games, I'm sure it's like, oh shit, that's Springtrap, like that'll register for people right away. But if you hadn't seen what Springtrap looks like, in his usual form where he's like all like rotted and stuff, then I think maybe you could have been like confused. It's like, wait, is that guy Springtrap? So, which is kind of what I did for a few moments, where I was like, oh, okay, now this I'm seeing all the dots, it works. And then the ghost kids, like, a bunch of parts of the pizzeria like explode. Like I think doesn't like the sign blow up just from like the psychic backlash, and like the kids drag Afton. Afton is like on the floor, kind of writhing, as the suit just like smashes him up, and like Foxy like hooks into him, and they drag him off somewhere as like Mike, Vanessa, and Abby all escape. And then we get a pretty tidy conclusion for the most part, with showing that Abby is like reaching out more at school, like she's getting better, and Mike's getting better too, and their relationship has improved. They go see Vanessa in the hospital. Like Vanessa's in a coma, which is sad, but she's still alive. And we kind of like a tender, we would definitely be dead if you hadn't come back. Like I don't know if you can hear me, but thank you. Mm-hmm. And that's in a lot of movies where something like this happens, like it doesn't feel like you really get a scene like that to kind of emphasize the emotion. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I was
Right.
happy with that at the end as well.
And anyway, so we get the last couple of bits of the movie are Abby and Mike just gonna talk a little bit about what happened. And she's like, they're all alone in there. There's nobody to take care of them now. Because Afton was at least kind of doing that. Like, they did look clean, not like dilapidated. She was like, can you visit them sometime? And you could tell Mike wanted to be like, hell fucking no. But instead he was just like, we'll see. Or you never know what could happen, I think was what he actually said. Which I think that's probably like the best answer we could have given. Because they were really only like murder-y when like he was around or when they were being like directly threatened. So and knowing like who they actually were, like the ghosts of murdered children, like maybe under certain circumstances they would be okay to be around, So I can see him. It's kind of a punt answer he gives, but I think it's like a more like a measured answer, to give like a child who might not take, no way in hell never, like very well. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And the last thing we see is it cuts back to Freddy's, and Afton is still alive, just being like tortured to death by the suit. Like they've got him like stuffed in a meat locker in the back, which I don't know if we mentioned earlier, but the guys who break in that get slaughtered, and we see in one of the back rooms that they were all like, what was left of them was like shoved into like unused animatronics, which is what happens in the game when you die. Like they, when they kill you, that's what they do. And it looks like Afton is just kind of stacked with those dudes as the Springtrap suit like rips him apart. And one of the few pieces of Five Nights at Freddy media I had seen besides the games like before this was a GIF of the purple guy being turned into Springtrap, and it's hard to describe with words, but the GIF is basically just you can see like a purple figure inside. This is an 8-bit too, so you can see a purple figure inside like a big yellow figure, just being like shaken apart. Like the whole thing is just like moving. It basically looks like if you put a person in a washing machine and there was a bunch of stuff in the washing machine, like knocking them around. It looked kind of just like
that. Fun.
But no, you're getting your fucking bones like turned to dust. Yeah, you're being powdered. And so like Afton is kind of left in that state. Like we see, I think that was the Golden Freddy ghost, child ghost, just kind of like looking in on him and like shutting the door on him. And it's implied that he's gonna be here like suffering for a really long time. And that seemed like a good place to kind of leave him. And then our credit scene is that last gag with Balloon Boy and the taxi driver. And we get I guess this song has been around for a while, but we get a kind of cool sounding song.
They said on IMDb it was a fan-made song, so I'm guessing this was just something someone posted on YouTube a while back, maybe?
Well, especially since the soundtrack consists of A Real Wild One by Iggy Pop, Talking in My Sleep.
Right.
There were a couple
Some
other
very 80s songs, yeah.
Those are from so it's one thing that I kind of appreciated was that it's not afraid to like let the animatronics be, like Chuck E. Cheese robots, like what they actually are. Like it does have them like play a few songs, and we get like that training video where they're playing some songs up on stage in their like intended function.
Yep.
And but So that's what was used in those sequences. But
Okay.
but yeah, it does have a pretty good like score on its own. Aside from like the, a lot of movies lately that have used licensed music have used it in kind of like corny, like ways. Like I think the Super Mario Bros. Movie is the worst offender for this, because the first time you watch it, it's like, hey, it's kind of fun hearing these songs, and then the second time you're watching it, it's like, why did it have to be like this song? Like, couldn't they have just written something to make it a little bit more unique? Or
Which one?
Apparently there's a whole conversation about Illumination, like that studio, overusing licensed music.
Yeah. You definitely see certain songs used ad nauseum.
Yeah, and so while that was kind of an annoying thing in some other movies, the licensed music is used pretty well here, and Freddy does not have that problem. So, and even the way it's framed in some scenes, it's like, isn't this great? When they're singing some kind of like cheesy pop song, it's like, no, the point's to show you that this sort of sucks. Like, that's the joke.
But again, talking in your sleep, there are probably a dozen songs at most that scream 80s more than that. You know what I mean? I think that song screams 80s.
I'm a real cool. I'm a wild one. I'm a wild one.
See, that one I associate with other versions of the song, so it's not as not as much for me. But anyway,
I went from Problem Child mostly.
Yeah. Well, BR449 has a rockabilly version that's really awesome. I love it. But anyway, so we touched on music. Do we want to go ahead and do production?
Yeah, let's do our kind of. I mean, we've done mostly like story discussion and characters and just scene by scene of the plot.
We really need to get the rest of it.
Yeah, we have our other categories to hit too. So we've got music and production, which since we're talking about music right now, we'll do production next. But the music is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Like I said, those licensed songs, like, they fit and they aren't intrusive, which I think is almost more important at this point, the way people have been using licensed music. I mean, last week of Totally Killer, we had some really great uses of licensed music, like as an example of like the best way to do it. And like, this isn't, the licensed songs in this aren't used as well to like amplify a scene, but they're kind of there to like make the point about, this is how this used to work. Showing them, singing like popular songs like as robots on the stage.
Yeah. And actually the whole thing, again, talking in your sleep, Wild One, they're kind of, if you think about it, they're kind of adult songs. And maybe not the very best thing they could have had these animatronics singing. So that's kind of the part of the joke too. And that's kind of fun. Like, there could have been songs they could have done that no one would bat an eye at or should bat an eye at. But Tugging in Your Sleep, for a place that's supposed to be for kids, that might make some parents go, huh?
Yeah. That gives me a thought, actually. I wonder if that was another way to kind of have things be like, yeah, it's a kid's thing, but also have it be like off.
Yeah. Then again, if they really, 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 really wanted to go that way, given the predilection of the main villain and what they were doing and everything, they could, if they really wanted to be on the nose about it, they could have always had a Michael Jackson song for one.
Oh no.
Beat it.
Right.
Oh, that is my brain kind of shut down for a moment, like processing that. Like, wow.
Oh man.
Holy crap. Oh, but well, anyway.
Actually, a Thriller would have been great. Well, with the Army of Undead theme of the video and everything, you know.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like I was alive in the 80s, but I wasn't like aware in the 80s. So most of those songs, I think, aside from like Wild One, I had never heard any of those before. So the thing they were doing with the lyrics and like having double meanings or like implied meanings, like that went over my head. So maybe those were even better picks than I thought they were. But anyway, like the score is cool. Like I picked up the score and I need to like listen to it kind of in isolation, but I mean it was good. So I'm pretty happy with the music, and now I think we've got kind of more to talk about in production because like the animatronics themselves, like they look fantastic. Like I think from what I understand, they're mostly like practical. I think there's some CGI stuff, but it's so like sparingly used, like you really can barely tell.
From what I understand, I mean, again, the Jim Henson Creature Shop was involved here, and from what I understand, they used puppets for a lot of it, and they actually had suits for some of the characters. They couldn't do a suit for Foxy because the way Foxy is built, you couldn't have someone inside. But
he would be like on stilts and is like missing a hand.
Right. But and obviously there was no one inside the cupcake. But you know,
right. I still don't know what the cupcake was. Like somebody said that the cupcake was Chica's baby, which what?
I don't know, but I don't know.
That implies
maybe that kid had a split personality or something. I don't know. Or
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. Like I kind of want to get to the bottom of that.
Right.
But
overall, I would say the animatronics were great. The practical effects were quite practical, especially since they did this on a low budget. I think they did a lot with a low budget. And
it doesn't even look like a low budget either. Like it looks pretty clean.
And I was going to say the general the locations and stuff too. They had very few locations, and that probably helped with the budget. But Freddy's itself is a convincing dump of a former restaurant. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and it looks like a big place too. I mean, from the outside, it is kind of big, and the inside, it feels like the inside matches the exterior that they show us.
Yeah.
Like we're not like I mean, we probably are on a soundstage, but it does look like a building that, you know, you would go into and it would follow a logic in how it's laid out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It said it had a budget of $20 million.
And it made like what?
It had a gross. It had a gross in U.S. and Canada of 136,184,280.
And I think it made almost a third of that the opening weekend.
Yep.
Like I saw
made about 80,170,720.
Oh, that much? Okay,
Yep.
I remembered the numbers wrong.
I was gonna jokingly be like, you know, and it's made like what, almost $1 billion at this point, and it's like
worldwide it made 280 million.
Well, they said, yeah, here we go. Yeah, it made 80 million. It beat Halloween to be the highest opening yet for a Blumhouse film. And after the Mario Brothers opening of 146 million, this is the second highest opening weekend for a video game movie. So it's not bad.
I think it's Blumhouse's most popular film to date. So
Well, Blumhouse has had a lot of films that kind of flew under the radar, and like they've been pretty solid. A lot of their stuff is really good. Like I have enjoyed a lot of the Blumhouse stuff I've seen. I haven't seen all of it, and I haven't seen some of the ones that people hated. But
Yeah, they are usually typically pretty solid. One thing that's cool about Blumhouse is that they don't seem too like afraid to take risks.
right,
Like they try some kind of out of the box stuff, and like some of it doesn't work, and they just kind of move on. Like I think they were behind the Black Christmas remake and the Fantasy Island movie
that
and
was
the Craft Legacy movie, which I thought I didn't see Fantasy Island, but I thought the other two were okay. But I get why people didn't like them.
Legacy was good. I haven't seen that Treasure Island or
Legacy was good. I have seen Fantasy Island. I didn't hate it as much as other people seem to. It was definitely a different take on the Fantasy Island genre. But
Yeah.
I have a little bit of love for it. The other one is good too. It was decent.
And I do believe they were behind Joel Edgerton's directorial debut, The Gift, which actually I thought was a really good and underrated movie. But that one kind of just got dumped in theaters at the end of August. So, yeah, obviously it didn't make any money. But, yeah.
But
Well, I don't think it got dumped so much as it kind of snuck out because they didn't really have the budget, I guess, to go for a more highbrow. You know what I mean? But anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Blumhouse. But yeah, they're doing pretty good with horror movies, with horror lately. And like I said, I do appreciate that they have some of their movies like are kind of like kooky concepts, but they're willing to take risks on things, and it seems like the risks pay off more often than not. So
right.
I really appreciate that about them.
Tammi, what did you think about the production of the film?
I thought it was decent. The animatronics were, very convincing and quite scary at moments. Um, so, and like you guys have touched on already, they didn't really have a lot of places where they filmed, so that was a plus probably for them. And the place itself, Freddy's, yes, it does look like it's been abandoned for quite a while. So that was very convincing that, yep. It would have been a little bit more convincing if there would have been some graffiti, though.
Maybe that's
Usually,
what the security guard's for, actually.
well, usually places that are abandoned, they end up getting graffiti all over the place. So there was no graffiti. Come on.
Yeah, which well, I don't know. My point was that you pointing that out, it makes me go, oh, maybe the security guards. That's why they have security guards, keep people from doing that. And
might have been part of it. And also, I mean, again, it wasn't completely abandoned. They had the lights on,
Yeah, that's
but they didn't seem to have security guard during the day.
Right. This is true. This is true.
Vanessa was just kind of patrolling it. Like, I wonder if that was actually on. I wonder if she was just lying when she said that Freddy's was on her beat. Because knowing what we know now from the end of the film, that she is basically like ordered by her dad to like check out the place from time to time. Like, I wonder if she was just there like off the books, like during her regular shift. You know what I mean?
I know Tammi had mentioned something earlier to me while we were watching it. Like, she wouldn't like it if she had to watch a place that had the lights on while she was there, because lights being on attract people. If you're trying to secure a place, that's why.
Yeah, because all the outside lights were on. It was all lit up as to that it was Freddy's, and Like, like, hello, I'm open for business. Why would all the lights be set up? You know, it should have just been the inside lights that were on, not all the outside and everything and the signs. If this
It
place stepped
probably
out,
I wonder if if people like ever would be like, oh, the lights are on, and they'd like try to actually go there for pizza.
yeah, I think it would not. I think you could take one look at the place and know that it's not open for business. But I do think it is a valid point that why would they keep running that big street sign? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
I mean,
But
it's
yeah.
possible it was just on supernaturally too. Like the
True.
ghosts would kind of power it on at night by their mere presence.
Yeah,
Which-
but it's
The
Vanessa.
way
who
they
turns
shot the sign lighting up, I think that might have actually been the case.
It's Vanessa who turns on most of the inner lights, and I think it looked like she actually threw on some of the outer lights too.
She showed him where the breaker and stuff was, yeah. But I thought that the outside lit up the first night he was there too, didn't it?
Yeah.
well, yeah, I think when he hit the breaker, all the lights came on, even the first night.
Okay. I thought the production was pretty darn good. I thought the place that they used for Freddy's looked like it was an abandoned place myself.
So a couple things that that people told me on Twitter about this was some of the like Five Nights at Freddy's like YouTubers and stuff, like when they did their cameos and they were on the set, they said that a lot of people had no idea like what they were making or like what was going on. Like they didn't do any like lore dives themselves. And if that's true, that's kind of hilarious that they ended up doing like such a good job without being like, well, it's in the script, okay, and it's like not knowing like all these extra details. But I don't know how true that is, because this is a franchise that's really rumors and like guesses are kind of par for the course, because originally the game kind of had no lore. I mean, there was like a loose idea of the story there with like what was implied, but after a point, I think the guy Scott Cawthorn at some point was just kind of like, oh wow, that theory somebody had on Reddit sounds really good. Like, I think I'll use parts of that when I add some more story in the next game. And I wonder what the creative direction was like overall, like for the whole process. Like, did he know that he wanted to do all this extra like elaborate stuff, or did that kind of come from just sort of like listening to the fans, and I don't know. I really do want to look into that now. Like I had before the disaster earlier today, I had queued up like lore dive 10 hours like videos, and I was gonna do that, and then I woke up like, no joke, like 9 hours later than I was supposed to.
It sounds like it's a game franchise that kind of created its own mythos as it went along.
Yeah, like it got going after it, just like word of mouth, like determined the story after a point. I mean, again, I could still be totally wrong on that, but that is how it seems to have shaken out, and I think that's kind of cool that you can have like a collaborative story writing almost.
Oh yeah. Well, let's head into favorite scenes and or favorite characters then.
Oh, I also want to real quickly point out, so at the end of the credits, there is kind of another thing. We hear like a voice kind of phonetically sounding out like letters. And from when I looked it up, from what it says, I think that the voice says like "find me," which is a reference to like a to something in the game, and I think that might have been like for Golden Freddy or something like that. I think you had to like find him or like meet some conditions to see him in the game. Like he wouldn't just appear the way a lot of the others would.
Either that or Steel Trap.
Or Springtrap. Well, Springtrap is Afton, so I mean maybe that. I don't know. I'll have to look up a bunch of stuff up, but yeah, there is a lot to this movie, and it is kind of fun how you can keep discovering things that were added or like seeded in. So, but at any rate, moving on to favorite characters, favorite scenes, all our typical wrap-up stuff. I think my favorite character. It's a little tough to decide between Mike and Afton, because Afton is such like a frightening, crazy villain, and Matthew Lillard like has so much fun with the role too. He's just chewing it up. Like it's hard not to like Afton, but in terms of just like a character that you like spending time with, I like Mike as the antagonist in this. I mean, like he's not like perfectly moral. Like he does have flaws. He does make mistakes. You know, he doesn't have everything together, and that makes him feel more real.
Yeah.
So I guess I would kind of split it between the two for my favorite character. And for favorite scene, I think the reveal of Afton in the Springtrap suit, where he, lays it out. It's like, yeah, I killed your brother. And it's like, I mean, I knew it, but some people in the audience genuinely needed to be told, which is honestly pretty sad, because this movie is kind of made for kids in a way that it's sort of like straightforward. Like the original games didn't have like a high rating, so like young kids like 10 could and like around 10 could play it like just fine. And so that's why its fan base, skewed so much younger. I mean, we're at the point now where, oh, I played that game when it was new when I was 10. Yeah, those kids are like 22 now. So that's kind of, we seem to be kind of in a weird spot with that, because, that audience can handle like darker, like more explicit content, but also it's still very, younger person aimed. I don't know. It's almost a problem kind of like Pokemon has, I think. But at any rate, so like it was not a hard. It could be a hard movie to follow if you weren't paying like a lot of attention. But it was designed to be easier to follow because of like the younger audience. So many people, like grown adult critics, it's like, why was this way? This didn't make sense. Or why did that happen? When a lot of it is explained in the movie, like, what are you doing, dude? Like again, throw their brain out. But like that whole Springtrap reveal, like, even though some of it was kind of like we figured it out earlier, like just having it like on the screen in the text, was useful. And like he was menacing. Like I had never really seen Springtrap before, aside from like in stupid memes. So it's like, oh, okay, I get why people are afraid of this dude now. Mm-hmm. And it also was some like resolution too to a lot of our plot lines, where everything like comes together, and it was just great. Like I enjoyed that.
Okay. What about you, Tammi? What about your favorites and scenes?
My favorite character was little girl Aggie. I liked her. She was so different, and everything. So it was just, I don't know. It's just something about her. And in a way, the whole movie ended up kind of like being centered around her. So my favorite scene was the when they were all when he brought her to work with him, when Mike brought her to work with him, and he finds her and he gets and all the animal they're all out on the stage performing, and I thought that and she just was, look at my friends and they're all performing. I thought it I guess it was so cool because it was probably like every kid's like fantasy that they're here's my friends and they're performing for me, and so
Yeah, like get to hang out with like the Chuck E. Cheese band, like, and they're your buddies.
right.
What about you, Jake? What was there a favorite scene and or favorite character that you liked?
I just remembered I did that, like the Ninja Turtles at Disneyland in like 1990.
I guess if this is one of those ones where it's tricky because I can't really necessarily say that my favorite character to watch was my favorite character per se. Because while I'm fairly neutral on the subject of Steve Raglan, I cannot say that William Afton was a likable character at all. But
Right.
I did thoroughly enjoy the scenes with him. Matthew Lillard did such a great job with the role. I thoroughly enjoyed those scenes. If I had to pick a character that I really liked and was rooting for, I guess Abby probably would have to be the because she was kind of an innocent in all of this and what have you. Favorite scenes. I do love the scene early on where Raglan and Mike are talking about his job prospects. I thought that was really great. And probably that moment where they were the conspirators were talking about breaking and entering, and that lawyer tried to leave and was shot down like, no, you can't leave. And that final jump scare with the balloon boy, those were all really fun moments. I can't really think of anything that like jumps to the like this is the best scene. I can't really think of anything that would really jump to the front, but those all come to mind as really good moments. So yeah, go with that.
And I think I might have said earlier, but just in case nobody mentioned it, like it would have been kind of nice to get some sort of resolution, like with the lawyer, because he was really funny in like all his scenes, and he just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
Like we don't know him anymore, but at the same time, like, and you were also kind of describing, I think, what I was feeling too with Afton and Mike, because it's like Afton is, I like you said, you can't really say like likable because this guy and Freddy Krueger would be like comparing notes.
Yeah.
Like they would be like, "Oh man, you did that? Rad! Here's what I did." And it's like, "Oh, that's good too." I can just imagine them like having a good time together.
Right.
Terrible people. But yeah, it was a good point you made with having to split, enjoy watching and
Okay. Well, I myself, trying to think of my. I'm on the same fence with you, Jake. That Matthew Lillard is enjoyable to watch in the role, but is he necessarily a character that you kind of like? Not really, but would I like to see him again in the franchise? Yes, I would. But I do like the moment where all of the animatronics are laying down with the cop and Mike and Abby like underneath the fort. That was a cool moment. I do enjoy the moments when he actually gets to zap the animatronics. Those are cool. Some cool moments. I do enjoy that lawyer scene. I don't think I should be here. No, sit down. But I also enjoy the final moment, and I do enjoy that credit scene. Out of all the jump scares, that's actually one of the better jump scares in the movie. In fact, it is the only good jump scare to me in the movie. I wish that I want the sequel to be rated R. I don't care that this one was PG-13. I don't care that that they went more kiddie scares than anything else in this movie. What I do care about is them amping it up a little bit in the second feature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that is another. I think we pointed out too, but it is kind of funny that
for kids,
the series is about the games are about like an ambience, but they are ultimately also like jump scare the game, and they're not being jump scares really in their movie. Like I can't figure out if it's either like a mistake or if it's like a really hilarious like gag that everybody would expect wall-to-wall jump scares and they just don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're almost afraid to do it.
I can see that read too. Like that also that makes sense to me too.
Or
like
it could be that they were thinking ahead to the second, maybe third film, and that they are planning on amping it up, and that maybe the first film was meant to give you a false sense of security. You never know.
That could be possible too. Like quite a few other critics and like media analysts and people who know about this stuff in terms of like trends and who the audience is for what. A lot of them were commenting that a lot of older people like us have very little idea just how popular like Five Nights at Freddy's in particular actually is. To the point where we're like, oh, well, that was weird. That was okay, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm just getting into games now. So,
or it's like, these people are like, the people who like the game are like mega obsessed with everything like tangentially related to it. So like I think it was pretty much going to be successful almost no matter what. But the fact that they did a good job on it made it even more so. So there's I guess the whole point of that ramble is that we're almost definitely getting at least one or two more sequels, and it'll be fun to see where it goes.
And I suggest they amp it up to at least an R-rated movie, and that is my suggestion for the director.
R-rated would be good. I mean, I would like to see kind of like more like, well, I almost said carnage, but I don't know if the rest of the movie is done as well as kind of like the suspense and like creepy vibe was done in this. I almost wouldn't mind not getting too much like more blood, but I would definitely like to see kind of like a higher body count to kind of drive home the point that of how like messed up these creatures are.
Oh yeah, because in this particular movie, there is kind of a happy ending, and it's kind of like it would have to be like an Empire Strikes Back type of thing, where it would have to be like coming back at whoever with a full force throttle mayhem, Yeah,
and I mean, we do get sort of a setup for that, like with Afton being dead and becoming Springtrap. I feel like there's places that'll definitely go. Like that has to be the sequel, right? But this went through quite a lot of different scripts before they got one that was like, okay, we think this will make people happy, because like I said, like the fandom is really, really dedicated to the point where if you did a bad job, like you would be like, they would maybe rush the gates at your house and burn it down. Like if you were Jason Blum, and it's like, yeah, you're a Five Nights at Freddy's movie that like all the rabid fans hate. Like, you might be in danger. That had happened. So it seemed like they put a lot of work into really getting it right. And there's even some conjecture that Willy's Wonderland and the Banana Splits movie are secretly like reworks of pitched ideas for the Five Nights at Freddy's script.
Yeah.
The rumor is especially strong with Willy's Wonderland, which I forget which. There were some details somebody told me where I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense when you tell me that, but I do not remember what that was, and I hope I'm remembering it right. So I mean, we'll see what happens for sequels, but I agree with all the stuff you said.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully you as an audience has enjoyed our discussion on this movie. Justin, I'm glad you were able to join us for this.
Yeah, it was. They had me in the first 20 minutes, not gonna lie, but I was able to bounce back pretty good. So probably gonna be up all night now, though. So yeah. But yeah, if you're still listening, thank you for coming and checking us out, and hopefully we weren't annoying or anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to promote this on my Twitter, Cryptaxis. So with any luck, some of my buddies from there don't hate me for having pauses or losing my train of thought, or maybe eating one or two things wrong here and there. So, but we did our best, and this movie is awesome, and I'm happy we got to hang out and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. But in any case, let's go around and do our outros. So, Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am Cryptaxis / the Cryptophores. So I have a YouTube channel, the Cryptophores, where I collect horror movie stuff, mostly in better times when I could afford to do that. And I just do videos where I show off the things I found, or I try to talk about horror in any capacity. So I'd like to try and start doing some movie reviews, just quick ones. I also did a few special collection videos. It's like the Wicker Man got a really nice video Blu-ray earlier this year, or no, it was last year. Dang, early last year. And so I did a video with here's all my Wicker Man stuff. Here's the history of it. And so I want to try to do some more work like that beyond just here's this awesome stuff I found at Goodwill today. But it's been pretty difficult to make ends meet so that I have enough time and energy to do that. So we're thinking of maybe launching a Patreon or something where I don't know if I'd be able to have rewards or something, but it would just be a way to be hey, buy me lunch so I can actually do this. So we're working on getting content made again. We have the really fancy Chucky set to unbox. We have kind of all kinds of cool stuff in the chamber from that I bought last year, and there's a handful of stuff I was able to get this year. And so there's kind of that to look forward to. So that channel is the Crypt of Horrors, which I'm trying to work a way to. So my Twitter name is Cryptaxis, the Cryptaxis, because I like Cryptaxis. It's shorter and means something, but I'm gonna have other people figure out what. And it's also easier to search. So the Cryptophores channel may just become Cryptaxis later on. And you can also find me on Twitter, or X, I guess now. And I'm never gonna get used to it being called X, am I? You can find me on that as Cryptaxis, where I spend way too much of my free time and just kind of bitch about movies and life in general. and it's generally a pretty good time over there. So follow me there. And the Instagram, the Crypt of Horrors, is a place where I also show off things from the collection, and as well as new pickups occasionally. I'm better at posting on Instagram, so if you're gonna follow anything to start with, follow the Instagram first. So I mean, of course, subscribe to the channel, but that's all the stuff I do. Hopefully can get back to doing some more advanced horror writing like I did previously. And yeah, that's us. So yeah. Next.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go next because it's already 1 o'clock here. I'm Kotobukijake. I'm the occasional co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, YouTube channel dedicated to physical media, but we've had a rather spotty contribution to the interwebs lately. I've been working on some other projects, so there'll be some stuff coming soon. And I keep pretty busy. Actually, that's why I need to go, because I have my job that keeps me pretty busy. But I do like to watch movies, so I can join these fine folks and discuss things once a week. And going in December, since Brandon couldn't join us tonight, I'm going to go ahead and give us the lineup we got to look forward to. First off, we got Dave's choice, the old Dudley Moore Santa Claus the movie from 82, I believe it is.
Yep.
Then Brandon's choice, Santa Jaws. Seems self-explanatory.
Oh God, yes. Right now at Joanne Fabrics, I found these in the checkout line. I actually found like Christmas socks that said Santa Jaws on them. They were like $2. They were great. They're on my Instagram, the Crypt of Horrors. Also follow my Letterboxd, Crypt Access, which I completely forgot to plug earlier. But yeah, you can get. I'm certain they aren't related to the film in any way. They just happen to say Santa Jaws, but you can get Santa Jaws socks. That is the bullet point takeaway here.
Good times. Good to know. Knowing is half the battle. Yeah.
That movie kicked ass, so looking forward to that.
And speaking of battles, my choice is going to be Fat Man, about an embattled Santa Claus and the snot-nosed little punk that puts a hit out on him. And then, Tammi, I guess your choice is The Grinch. Is that the Illumination one, or is it? Yep. Okay.
There is only one movie out there called The Grinch. I kept telling Brandon that too.
Right, and that's what I thought. But you know, Brandon, you can tell him a dozen times, this is what you need to write, and he'll write something else. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
But
it is The Illumination.
Anyway, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight because, like I said, it's already 1 o'clock here. So good talking with y'all.
Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night. And then, Tammi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel and another one, and I talk about movies with my fiance and everybody else. And I have my own collection, and that's about it right now.
Okay. And I myself, I go on here with you fine folks to talk about movies of all kinds, whether they be new or old. And Dustin, thanks for bringing us into the 23rd century with these movies. Glad I was able to get to see some of these newer films.
So there's a lot of really good new stuff out there that I think it would be fun to give some appreciation to, because we usually do older movies, and we tend to kind of overlook a lot of newer releases. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more. So that's why I figured these would be fun picks for us. And I had a great time. And sorry I was late. It's just rough health day.
No problem. We just needed to get the ball rolling because some of us were waiting a little bit, but that's no problem. So, but
anyway, I'm gonna head out. So see you guys later. And like, share,
good night.
and,
Try to. Yeah, I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we kind of go on and do some similar stuff on Sundays. In fact, I do believe that we are going to be doing a movie called I Know What You Did Last Summer. And that does not mean that that you picked your nails or something like that. But in any case, I do some video pickups and some video reviews. And lately, I've been filming for my anthology from time to time. But we've had a couple of weeks where we've had some holidays and some sickness going around. But we'll be back on track with that after things settle down. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Hopefully you had a chance to watch the movie before you saw our discussion. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of the film, what you thought of our discussion, and we'll see you next week for the new month. In any case, everyone say goodnight.
Night.
You showed up in time, so I missed you.